Hey there, fellow nerds and geeks. Aaron Nabus here, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Hall H show. On this episode, we do a recap of WonderCon 2017, and joining me and my co-host, Alex Benedicto, are Joel Feria, a photographer from Convention.Life, Jason Lethert from HeroJournalism.com, and Dan Barry. He contributes to both the Nerd Element and an Englishman in San Diego. This one clocks in at about 2 hours and 45 minutes. We had a lot to say, and we had a lot of fun, so we hope you enjoy. I had meant to upload this a little bit earlier, but you know how it goes. Adult things like work, freelance projects, taxes. So my apologies, but it is worth the wait, and enjoy. Hey there, fellow nerds and geeks. Aaron Nabus here, and welcome to the Hall H Show. On this episode, we recap our experiences at WonderCon 2017, which took place from March 31st to April 2nd in Anaheim, California. As always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Alex Benedicto, and we also have three other people joining us today: writer and filmmaker Jason Lethert, contributing photographer from the Convention.Life, Joel Feria, and last but not least, the man who goes to let's say 200 conventions a year, Dan Barry. Dan is also a contributor to the Nerd Element and an Englishman in San Diego. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Hey, glad to be here.
Today is Saturday, April 8th, and San Diego Comic-Con 2017 open registration was this morning. So congrats to those that were lucky to get a badge, and a big virtual hug to those that didn't. This episode, we will find out what each of us did at WonderCon. We'll quickly run through some panels, some highlights, what panels we wish we could have attended, what could be improved. We'll put a quick spotlight on some artists that recently caught our attention online in our Art Watch segment. We'll ask our guests some off-the-beaten-path questions in our Thunder Round, and then we'll end the show with a flash forward. We'll talk about what's on the horizon for all of us. I guess we'll do a quick introduction from our guests. Can each of you introduce yourselves and let our audience know what first got you hooked on being a nerd? Quickly mention where would people find you online, and what organizations or blogs you contribute to. I guess we'll start with Dan.
Okay. My name's Dan. I started getting into the quote-unquote nerd back in the early 90s, mid-90s, when I actually wandered into a comic book shop downtown. For those who know San Diego, it was called House of Comics, which was one of the oldest comic book stores in San Diego. I worked there for a couple years, and that's when I attended my first Comic-Con in the mid-90s, and since then I've been almost every year since 2000. I think this is my 20 or 21st straight Comic-Con. I contribute to both the NerdElement.com and to an Englishman in San Diego, also an EnglishmanSanDiego.com. And you can find me on Twitter under my own username, which I don't use too often, but FATJ00.
My name is Joel. I'm here from Convention.Life. You can find us on Instagram under Convention.Life. I think I knew I was a nerd very, very young. I had inherited a collection of comic books from my Uncle Noel that dated all the way back to probably Giant Size X-Men #1. It had a torn cover. I didn't know what it was. I was just reading it, and I fell in love with it. And growing up, I was a little bit of a latchkey kid, so when I'd come home from school, I'd sit in the garage and read comics till my parents came home, and kind of just evolved from there. I've been attending Comic-Con since 92, I guess, whenever it moved to the convention center, and I've been attending ever since. And it's just taken over my life, I think, and and very happy with the growth of the genre of nerddom at this point.
What was the last place that it was at before the convention center? Was that the Cortez?
Oh no, I think it was at Golden Hall. Golden
the
Hall,
old- the
yeah,
old convention
the old
center.
convention center at Golden Hall, and I know people that have attended or that did attend when it was there, and I started when I first went to the convention center, so that was my first experience with the con.
Well, I'm a transplant from Minnesota. My name's Jason Lethert, and so unfortunately I couldn't start attending Comic-Con until 2000. But as far as what got me into nerdism, we actually talked a little bit on a previous podcast about like what got us into comic books, and the very first step for me was finding these random comic books throughout my house, and not quite as hardcore as what your dad or whoever you said that gave you his collection.
Yeah, my uncle.
Your
Yeah.
uncle, okay. But like one of them was, X-Men like 125 or
Nice.
something. So it was, and Marvel Tales, the second issue of the death of Gwen Stacy and all that. But I think a big part of it was also, growing up on old Star Trek reruns on Saturday afternoons and Saturday morning cartoons, old reruns of the original 60s Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends came out in the early 80s. That was really what fueled the fire, I think, and I've been an unabashed nerd ever since.
Awesome. I guess we'll move on to what we did at WonderCon. I guess we'll start off with Alex. What did we do at WonderCon, Alex?
Let's see. Came in Friday morning and picked up our badges. And first thing we did was hit Artist Alley and did some promo videos for various artists. That was mostly Friday. Some of the panels I attended on Friday was, I think the only one I did was the Goldbergs. The mom and dad were there. Adam, the writer or producer of the show, was there too. And they actually, at the end of the panel, he brought up his the actual Barry, his brother. So that was pretty cool. Saturday, I did a couple, two or three. See, hip hop and comics, cultures combining. Then we went to the DreamWorks Voltron panel. That was pretty cool. They played a April Fool's joke on everybody by showing a certain clip. It was pretty funny. And then we did the virtual effects of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And on Sunday, I only did a couple of them, Make Nerdy Living and Jack Kirby Tribute. It was pretty cool.
Kirby Tribute is always
Always good.
worthwhile.
Oh, yeah.
It's like whatever con you're at, if you look at it and you see a Jack Kirby Tribute and that doesn't conflict with something else, that's a solid spot.
Yeah.
It's usually hosted by Mark Evanier.
Which
and
it was.
Yeah, that guy is the best. He is so knowledgeable and just has so many anecdotes and information to convey. It's awesome.
I'm kind of curious since I couldn't attend the Make a Nerdy Living panel. What was that like?
Oh, it's cool. I have a video. We gotta splice it together though. But it was cool. They had Jack Kirby's lawyer, a representative from the Jack Kirby Museum, and a representative from IDW who's publishing some Jack Kirby books. So it was a good panel. And check out the video when you get a chance on our YouTube.
I think any convention has to have like a Jack Kirby something or other. It's got to be a prerequisite. You know what I mean? I mean, it's such a legend in the field, and the artists and the new fans of comic books that are coming up now, and they have to pay homage to that because it's just you're not here without being there first. So I mean, anytime there's a Jack Kirby exhibit or a Jack Kirby presentation, it's always good to go and just kind of pay tribute.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for everyone who's lucky enough to get San Diego Comic-Con badges, Mark Evanier said it's going to be a lot of Jack Kirby panels to look forward to. So keep your schedule open for those panels.
That's right. It's like a big anniversary, I think, isn't it? He'd be like 100.
Yeah, I think he's 100 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he
August
passed away, I
is-
think, in 94, 93, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
So,
I think his birthday's in August. I forgot the exact date though.
yeah, so we'd be talking right about,
Right about 100. Yeah.
Yeah, so look out for the programming and
Yeah,
for those
right.
Jack Kirby panels. Some of the panels I wish I attended. Friday, I would have liked to see the Valiant 101. Just get a little more of the background on stories of that publisher. It looks like they have a lot of cool stories on there. On Saturday, I missed the Wildstorm 25th anniversary one. That would have been cool to see all the talent that started with Wildstorm and where they're at now. It's a lot of talent that started with them. And Sunday, I missed the Princess Leia Star Wars tribute. That would have been a cool one to see too. Some highlights for me were meeting new creatives like writer David Pretsch. Picked up one of his book he wrote called Tethered, with artwork by Danny Lethert and lettering by Lindsay McComb. Looks pretty nice. Artwork looks pretty cool, so I look forward to reading this one. Also, David Barron, he did some work on Marvel and Valiant, so that was pretty cool meeting him. And a new one I never heard of before was the Creative Extreme, which is they had something called the 360 Project, where they revealed one character each day of the last year. So they had 366 characters revealed last year, and each of them has a background story. And pretty soon they're gonna combine them all into a comic and different medias. So I look forward to seeing them.
Is this one universe?
Yeah, one universe.
Created
Yeah.
365 characters in 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Plus,
That's nuts.
I think they have over 500 because previous, 2015 and this year they're still creating characters. So,
That's
guys
awesome.
said they have over 500 characters to work with. So that was pretty cool. Some artists that we met, recommended by other friends, were Danae Frazier from Arizona from Jazz Superheroes XYZ. Thank you for introducing her. She was a pleasure to talk to, and her husband. And also Jungle Boy Productions. They do licensed T-shirts and merchandise for Game of Thrones. So it was cool meeting them too. Also meeting artists that we follow on social media and never met before, like Chrissy Zulo, real talented artist. Art Thurbert, popular Marvel artist, and Sean Cheeks Galloway. Finally got a chance to meet him. So, and another cool highlight for me was seeing a friend's brother who does Ewok masks with at booth 1944 Endor Moon or Emerald Moon, tree on Endor, and it was cool because they sold out of every single one of their
Really?
masks. Yeah, everything they had, their shells were bare.
Key question. Do the eyes blink?
Yeah, because they're see through.
Well, and I'm talking about the special effects on the. You digitally made them blink in the special edition.
Yeah, so congratulations to them. Their first big con. I think their next one is Phoenix Comic Con. So hopefully we can make it out there and support them. That's about it for me. So who's next? Dan, you want to talk about some of your recap on WonderCon?
Sure. Well, while I was there, I did a few different press roundtables. I attended the press roundtables for the Goldbergs, which is a dual press roundtable with that and Imaginary Mary. I also did the Lucifer roundtable and a new show debuting later this year on NBC called Midnight Texas. At the Goldbergs one, I actually spoke with Kevin Smith, who directed this past week's episode, The Dynamic Duo.
Wow.
Yeah, as well as creator of the show, Adam Goldberg, and the two of the stars, Jeff Garlin and Wendy McClendon Covey. For the Imaginary Mary Roundtable, I spoke to stars Jenna Elfman and Steven Schneider, as well as some of the creators and producers, Patrick Osborne, Doug Robinson, and David Guarascio. For the Lucifer Roundtable, the main stars weren't there, but I did speak with some of the other stars, Kevin Alejandro, Leslie Ann Brandt, and Rachel Harris, as well as two of the director and producers, Joe Henderson, and Ildi Modrovic. And for the Midnight Texas Roundtable, they had most of the main cast there, as well as the creator. So Sarah Ramos, Francois Arnaud, Ariel Kebbel, Jason Lewis, Parissa Fitzhenley, Dylan Bruce, and the creator and executive producer Monica Owusu-Breen were all in attendance at that roundtable. Some of the panels that I attended during the show, I attended the Warner Brothers panel, which had footage from Annabelle 2, the can't think of the right word, a prequel to the previous ones, The Creation, that's what we're looking for, as well as the WB panel, which had a lot of footage from Wonder Woman and the DC portion of it. I also attended the Film Threats 2017 movie panel, hosted by Chris Gore. Those were the only panels that I attended during the con. Panels that I wish I could have attended, but didn't have time to do either roundtables or just wander, were Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I wanted to go to the Midnight Texas panel and at least see some of the footage, which I have yet to see any for. And the Wynonna Earp panel, only because last year at WonderCon, actually was on the red carpet and saw the world premiere of it. Some of my highlights from the con were just kind of wandering, seeing all the different cosplay, all the booths, and all the various roundtables I attended. Joel, how was your con?
Can I ask how was that Film Threat panel? I've always been a huge fan of Chris Gore and Film Threat.
Exactly.
It was very good. He had 4 different people there in attendance. One of his partners who's worked on Film Threat before with them, and who has attended quite a few movie screenings, and 3 others who I can't remember their names off the top of my head. But they kind of talked about all the movies that were coming up from now to the end of the year, and gave their thoughts about them and what they're looking forward to, whether or not a movie they would want to see or not want to see.
Sorry.
Go on.
How scary was the Annabelle footage? Was that nuts?
It had a couple of jump scares in it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of an origin movie, so you get to see how the doll was created without going into spoilers. But I mean, they kind of show what led to the creation of the doll, which is kind of interesting if you're into Annabelle.
Yeah, really excited for that actually.
Yeah, they had the director there, and he was answering questions, and he was. Let's see, trying to remember who was moderating it. The host works for DC All Access, so she was the one asking him questions.
Cool.
I'm kind of curious, for your press roundtable, what is that like exactly for people who don't know?
Basically, it's literally like it sounds. You sit at a table with a bunch of other
Journalists.
people. Thank you. Thank you, the right word. Yes, with a bunch of other journalists. The stars and or creators come to your table. You have between 5 and 10 minutes. Just ask them questions, and usually someone asks a question. And the way it's usually supposed to be nice to the other people is someone asks a question, and someone else will ask, and so on and so forth. Sometimes people will take advantage and just shoot questions off. Yeah, which happened at one of our roundtables, and we actually kind of got on the guy's case, and he kind of backed down.
Usually what they do is, just to kind of flesh that out, is they'll have like 10 or 20 tables. You go in before any of the talent people get there, and you just pick tables at random. And you end up getting, saddled with anywhere from 3 to 4 other journalists or whatever, and then you just wait. And then when the people come in, they do it like a circuit, like a round robin circuit. So they got one handler coordinating the traffic, and then you got 10 minutes or something for about 10 or it could be less, could be more per table, and then almost like a bell dings. Not a formal bell. The person goes around and tells everybody, but then they get up and they switch, and then you got the next person or whatever. And you just hope that they're going through the system quickly enough that you get each person. Because I have been at a couple of those where you're the big star is just about ready to go to your table, and they're like, "All right, that's it, folks. We're out of time."
Luckily, we didn't have that.
Good.
The moderator or the handlers were actually keeping it up. They would actually come to your table and kind of wrap it up, so we know how much time we have, and then they move in. Everybody was supposed to be at the round tables, showed up, and we got to talk to them. Kevin Smith wasn't actually not even listed as being in attendance, but because he was directing and moderating the Goldbergs panel, of course they were going to bring him in.
Awesome.
You guys are lucky to get 10 minutes with the cast and crew of those shows. I mean,
10 minutes at most. It's usually closer to 5 to 8, I think, during this one.
You should try it from the photography line. I've been in the photography line, and we get 2 shots, 3 shots max, and if they move on, and we're done.
Yeah, so that's why I prefer doing the round table and I film it all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's funny because I've only done a couple of them. I've a handful of them, half a dozen or whatever, over the past like 4 years or whatever. But when I was at one of the coolest ones I got to go to was the Killing Joke DVD animated movie, and it was funny because I was kind of jealous of the photo guys because it seemed like they got forever with them. I mean, they were not just taking, it wasn't just photos though. They were doing like video interviews or whatever. But God, I just thought that they were like, they got some really good exposure on that.
Depends on what outlet you're with, honestly. If you're like an EW or like Vanity Fair, people, you're gonna get the time with them. But if you're, I mean, I've shot for Fox 5 News, and when I get up there, it's really just a couple shots here and there, and then hopefully they're standing next to you and you get some side shots of them, and hopefully they come back around, or you ask their handler if, can we get a couple more shots at the end, and if they're lucky enough to come back, then you're good to go. But if you don't get your shot, you can see the photographers like wandering the room to the press tables and like getting shots there, see if seeing if they can just get their shots there that they missed on the carpet. So
yeah, I kind of did the opposite way. I was at a round table, but I actually stood up and took pictures as they were walking down the line and got a bunch of shots that way.
That works too. Yeah, that works too. Well, I attended this is Joel. I attended WonderCon. I'm sorry, this is my first podcast, so I'm a little nervous, but I was only able to attend WonderCon one day. I went up on the Saturday, which is, it's a quick turnaround for us. Showed up there early in the morning, waited, closed it out at 7, and kind of just hung around and waited for stuff to happen. But for the most part, when I was there, it was a lot of photography, a lot of cosplay photography, a lot of vendor photography, some celebrity photography. One of the first things I did when I got there was try to get into a signing line for Gerard Way. If you don't know who Gerard Way is, he was a former frontman for My Chemical Romance, and now he's working as a comic book writer for DC. I think Dark Horse as well, did Umbrella Academy, and also doing some work for their DC's new imprint. I think he's writing for Doom Patrol at this point. So, it was amazing to meet him. Got his signature on a couple of things. Talked to him for a little bit. Wasn't allowed to take any pictures, but it was amazing meeting a guy like that goes from performing to thousands of people to scaling it down and becoming a comic book writer, and just meeting fans on a one-on-one basis. So that was cool. One of the panels though I wish I would have attended if I was there on Friday was the Goldbergs panel. I didn't know there was going to be a Goldbergs panel, but I would have loved to have seen that because I'm a huge fan of the show, and I think it's probably one of the funniest shows on television right now. And the cast that they have and the craziness that they have, and that they have in their episodes, just makes me laugh the entire half hour that it's on. So I really wish I would have gotten to see that. Highlights for me, aside from the Gerard Way signing and meeting him. Just meeting everybody and seeing all the randomness that happens there. You see cosplayers that are dressed like Logan. I mean, Logan came out 3 weeks ago, and you see people like rocking that, and you see cosplayers who've put together full mech suits that they're sitting in and they're moving. The feet move, the hands move, they light up, and I'm like, how do you do this? Within I don't care how much time you have. It's ridiculous. You guys can make that kind of outfit. People on stilts. My little cousin from San Jose, she came down, she's 5 years old, she was dressed like Chun-Li, and so she was taking pictures with everybody that day. I'm like, and she loved it. So just, meeting people, meeting artists, and seeing how they're living their convention life. How they're living their convention life. I like to hear their stories. I like to see how they're enjoying their con. So that was really one of the highlights for me.
That's awesome. For those of people who want to get into photography at a convention, do you have any advice for them?
If you want to be a photographer, really just go out there and do it. Right now in the age of digital media, you can go out there and post your pictures anywhere you want, and people will find them. Honestly, if you tag your picture on Instagram, Batman, I'm sure you'll get 1,000 people looking at that photo before the end of the day. You know what I mean? Batman, WonderCon, Comic-Con, your picture will get around. I mean, it's also about extending yourself out there and putting yourself on the line. Like when I first started, Fox 5 was just looking for volunteers, people that were going to con already. And they were like, hey, if you're going to con, why don't you wear one of our badges? It's not going to get you anything, but, you know, instead of looking like the guy that's asking the woman in the bikini to take a picture, you know, you're the Fox 5 guy asking the woman in the bikini to take a picture. So
it's funny you mention that, because I saw something sort of related to that happen. Like these two fairly attractive cosplayers, you know, obviously people want to take pictures of them, and they had a different attitude from press photographers to like regular folk attendees.
It's a fine line that you got to walk. I mean, you know, they're there enjoying the con, and most cosplayers like to talk to you. So if you go up to a cosplayer and take their photo, you know, sometimes it's nice to just have a little discussion with them, because, you know, you let them know that you're interested in what they're doing. You let them know that their cosplay really, you know, really has moved you to the point where you want to take a picture with them, as opposed to the guy that's just, you know, walking down the street and sees a whole bunch of people taking pictures of the one cosplayer, and they're like, oh, I got to get in on that.
Yeah,
before
that's a good point, because I was listening to I don't know if you guys listen to the Nerd Food podcast, but Steve was just recently talking about, I guess, how they were talking about celebrities that they met that they've had like the best experience with, and I think he talked about his experience with Jessica Chobot, and like after she got out of a panel, she got, you know, people noticed her and wanted to take pictures of her right away, whereas he just kind of just chilled in the background for a little bit, and you know, and just, you know, hey, you know, just took his time and made eye contact, this little thing, and they had like a little conversation, you know, afterwards.
Yeah, I'm not gonna speak bad about anybody because I don't want to get blackballed in any way. You know, it's you got to judge their mood. You got to be, you know, when you see them, you know, they're there working. You know, so if they're there working, if they're there eating, if they've just done something on stage, you know, you might want to give them some space and kind of just judge. Be a good judge of characters, whether or not you should go up to them at that point. I've had amazing experiences with people. I've had really, really bad experiences with people, like high-profile people. They just, at that point, soured me on, you know, on approaching them later on. And it's a mixed bag. But in the end, if you don't ask, then you're not going to get it. You know, if you don't ask for that picture, they're not going to say yes. So, but it's a fine line. You gotta judge them really carefully.
You know, if you just be polite when you're doing it, because I'm not a photographer, but I go through the same thing. You know, trying to get interviews. It's like, you know, it's a little intimidating because sometimes, you know, you can tell, oh, this person's kind of important or needs to be someplace or something like that. Like, what did you say, the Jessica? How do you pronounce the last name?
Chobot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, TV personality, right? So obviously she's going to be a little bit tougher to get or whatever. But you know, what you said is totally right. Just go for it, but just be polite, and I would just add, don't expect it always. Just hope and realize that, you know, it probably won't work out a lot of times, and then you'll be pleasantly surprised that it will work out enough times that it's worthwhile to keep at it.
Most of them are nice. Most people are nice when you go up to them politely, and it's just, if they say no, then you take your no, walk away, lick your wounds, and move on. And but you're right. Be polite. They're people like us. They just happen to be on TV or in the next new movie. I mean, so I mean it's. I've been like last year. Sorry to ramble on, but last year, you know, I had the opportunity to go into, like, hang out in the green room over at Carnival. I don't know if you, you know, Nerdist and Geek and Sundry put on something over at Qualcomm last year's Comic-Con, and I was allowed to be in the green room, but I wasn't allowed to take any photos of anybody in the green room. So I was kind of just hanging out, and you know, it's a touchy kind of thing when you're there and you have the opportunity, but you know that those people are there coming off the stage and trying to relax, and you don't, you know, you're told not to do that, and you just got to respect that. You got to respect everybody there, respect everybody Comic-Con, from cosplayers to the creators to the celebrities that are there. You just treat them with respect, and you know, you may be lucky enough that they'll come back to you at the end and take, you know, give you your picture that you're looking for. So, you know, we're all there for the same purpose. They're putting on the entertainment, we're taking it in, and we're all sharing in that. So, you know, it's just a matter of treating everybody with respect there, and hopefully you'll get what you want.
Oh, that's awesome advice, and thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
I guess before I move on to my panel, was there like any cosplay players out there that sort of you remember?
Oh yeah. There was a lot of gender bending cosplays that that
Right.
kind of
That seems to be a growing trend.
it's a growing trend. It's cool. Do you? I'm happy for you.
Right.
Do you? I'll take your picture. That's fine. There were actually
Maybe
a
you mean
couple
gender bending by like, female Captain America,
female Captain America, or typically female Lara Croft. There were a couple
Seriously?
Wonder Women who were
Yeah, I guess I
who were
did see.
male underneath, and
Male Tinkerbell.
male Tinkerbell. Yeah, there's male Tinkerbell. Yeah, do you? I'm good. I'm happy for you. So yeah, those are the ones that are most surprising, but I think those are the ones that really make me smile first and foremost because they're having fun with it, and if they're having fun with it, then I'm having fun with it.
Right. Cool. I guess for me, as Alex talked about a little bit earlier, we did a little blitz on Artist Alley and some of the exhibitors that we follow online. Our new thing that we wanted to try this year is to do some short little promo videos to help, I guess, people who are thinking about coming to WonderCon get to know the creatives a little bit better so they can go visit them when they get to WonderCon. So pretty much my panels it was kind of hard to go to some of them because we were doing that on Friday. But I did manage to go to one, and some like a recurring theme that I wanted to do this WonderCon was to concentrate on some of the writers because, we do spend a lot of time in Artist Alley, and being an artist is more than just an artist. I mean, there's, writers, photographers, cosplayers. Those are all artists in my eyes anyway. So the first panel I went to on Friday after our blitz was the Writing 101, What to Think About Before You Start Writing. And the panelist on this one was Marv Wolfman. He's the co-creator of Marvel's Blade, Bullseye. He created DC's Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg. So he talked a lot about his experiences. He discussed characters, plots, themes, and a whole ton more. I took a bunch of notes, which I will add to a blog post a little bit later. And really, it was a good way to sort of get your mind thinking about how to, get started on writing. And he put a real big emphasis on character development. So I'm looking forward to sort of recapping that in a blog post a little bit later. On Saturday, me and Alex had both intended to sort of go to the hip hop and comics cultures combining panel, but we had a little meeting at the Starbucks at the Hilton, and by the time we realized that we got to go to that panel, it's like already half over. But we ended up watching half of it, so I took some notes down, and I'll recap that in a later blog post as well. But it's pretty cool. It was moderated by a person named Patrick Reed. He's from Comics Alliance, and he brought a lot of hip hop people, people who are in hip hop and do a lot of sort of urban art. Some of them were like comic book related people. Some of them were muralists. So those are pretty cool panel, and I think they're going to be appearing at other conventions as well. So I'll be sure to catch the first half. Then there was the cinematic storytelling for comics. This one was pretty cool. We followed this person. His name is Stefan Frank. He was the supervising animator for The Iron Giant, and now he created his own comic book called Silver. And I ended up picking up the two trades and the newest issue number 7. I think there's actually an issue 8 that just came out too. I think I may have seen it on Comixology. So, but yeah, this guy's a pretty interesting guy, and his panel basically was taking what he's learned, making movies and applying that, to comic books. So, even this little things about perspective and angles, and even making sure that your subject, even though you're looking at different people, in different panels, that they're all sort of in the same location. So like, if I'm on the right in one panel, I always appear on the right on all the panels, depending on no matter what point of view, the reader's looking at. That way, the end user or the reader doesn't get disoriented. So even just little things like that was like, and I really thought about it before. So just taking all those cinematic approaches and translating it into his comic book, and you can tell. I mean, a lot of the panels that he showed are really dramatic, and it's like they're storyboards basically. So it was pretty cool. I really enjoyed his panel. And And then the last panel of Saturday was the VFX of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you guys know what the S.H.I.E.L.D. stands for?
The original, the real version, or the current version?
Ooh,
because the
okay.
original was, let's see. Now I don't know if I'm doing the current one or the old one, but it's Supreme Headquarters. What's the I? Supreme Headquarters. I know it's something Enforcement Law Division, I think.
wow.
I think
Was
so.
the original?
Was the
Maybe
original.
the like kind of, but then they like made it a little bit more
Yeah,
streamlined.
now it's just-
international would be the
International.
I, of
All right.
course,
That
of
makes
course,
sense.
right?
No one else. It's Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
Wow.
And you can tell that that's the newer version.
Yeah, of course.
Homeland. When did we ever use the term homeland other than to describe Russia before 9/11? That
Right.
is a word that really came into our lexicon, and that's interesting that now that's part of S.H.I.E.L.D., Homeland Security.
So this was a pretty cool panel. It featured Mark Kolpak, visual effects supervisor for Marvel, Sabrina Arnold, visual effects producer for Marvel, Kevin Lingenweiser, visual effects supervisor for Fuse FX, and Dan Melitz, he's a visual effects supervisor for COSA VFX. And it was moderated by our good friend Sean Richter. Him and his son were our guests on our previous podcast. So it was good to see him moderate that panel. And on Sunday, I went to the writer's journey, breaking in and managing a career in Hollywood. That featured Brandon Easton. He's written for Agent Carter. He's worked on IDW's Mask. And he's also writing now for Stranger Comics for the new Vampire Hunter D comic book. There's a Jeffrey Thorne. He's written for The Librarians. Uba Muhammad. He's written for ABC's The Whispers. And actress-writer Erica Alexander from Concrete Park, Queen Sugar. And then lastly, Tony Puryear. He's done work for projects such as Arnold Schwarzenegger's film Eraser. So it was a pretty eclectic panel, and it was really informative. And I look forward to hearing their other panels because they're going to be showing up, I believe, at Comic-Con as well. And then, what else? Oh, on Sunday at the last panel of the day, obviously it's Talkback. It was probably the shortest talkback ever. It was probably like 9 minutes. I was looking at the time of the video; it was about 9 minutes long. So obviously, I was there with Alyssa and Michael P. From Friends of CC, and also Scotty the Wise. That's his Twitter handle. I don't know his full name, but I think his first name is Scotty. So it was pretty cool. It was over so quick that we just talked about other things and took selfies. We talked about The Expanse and other pop culture nerd stuff. So yeah, I'll go into talk back a little bit later when we talk about some of the things that we think that could be improved for WonderCon. For my highlights, obviously, as I said before, we went up and down Artist Alley on the first day. It was good seeing our old friends Eric Nielotowski, Jeff Pasquale from Pasquale Productions, Ethan Castillo, Scott Lost, Patrick Ballesteros, Sebastian Jones from Stranger Comics, and even Andy Bayback from the Marvel Report. We just saw him in passing, and we talked for a little bit, and I said, hey, you want to do a little promo, tell me what you're looking forward to for WonderCon. He said, yeah. So it was cool having him, talking to him for a little bit, and then taking a little video. And then some new faces. Jin Young Kim, he's working on IDW's Transformers right now. Dave Wilkins, if David ever listens to this podcast, I just want to say thank you for the awesome Wonder Woman poster that you gave. Eddie Nunez, and this guy is a badass artist, Livio Ramondelli. I mean, his Transformer stuff is off the wall. And then, of course, Stefan Franks, as I mentioned earlier. And this last one, Tino Evil, they're good friends with the Nerd Food guys. And when I was, talking about stuff that we were going to be looking forward to at WonderCon, he said to pass by their booth. So I said, what's up? And I met Francis, and I think I met Franco at the blogger meetup, Game of Bloggers last year. So it was good seeing them, and I ended up buying a shirt from them too. So that was pretty cool. And then one definite highlight from this Blitz was that for those of you who listened to our last podcast with Sean Richter and his son Gavin, he had mentioned that he had commissioned Patrick Ballesteros to do a piece for them. And we just happened to, be there, and I saw out of the corner of my eye, Sean was talking to Patrick. So I moseyed on over and, said, hey, can I take a video of this awesome moment? They said, yeah, sure. So if you go up on our YouTube, I posted it there, so you can take a look at it. That was such a cool moment, and it came out pretty well. And you could just see that Sean was pretty stoked about it. Speaking of Sean, Saturday, my highlight was the VFX for Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. panel, because I went there because I'm a fan of the show, but also to support Sean as well, and he did an awesome job moderating. He could probably do that for a living. So props to Sean for awesome moderation. Sunday, this was pretty cool. I sort of crashed the Cup of Tea SDCC hangout that Leonard Sultana and Alyssa Franks they do every Sunday. It's like a YouTube live show. And we got to we passed by Tony Kim, Crazy for Comic-Con's Hero Within clothing line, their booth, and I actually tried on his new Wonder Woman denim jacket. So I tried on the extra large because I'm not as svelte as Tony, so it fit pretty good on me. So I actually, for those of you who are curious and who may have seen it online, I did end up buying it. So I'm waiting for it to come in. And then we were walking to, both Alyssa and I were walking to our next destination, just, talking. And then we came across Tony Armatis. He's an avid cosplayer, and he's a huge contributor to the SDCC Fit movement. And he was dressed as Captain America that day. He had cosplayed as Hawkeye on Friday. And I think he ended up being
MCU or classic comic?
MCU.
Oh, okay.
So, and then he ended up being Deadpool on Sunday. So props to Tony for doing an awesome job. And for those of you who want to follow Tony, he's starting to post a lot more of his cosplaying adventures, like even just some of his fabrications. So make sure you follow him online. And we also talked to Sebastian Jones, president of Stranger Comics. It's always good talking to him, because I love what Stranger Comics is doing. There's a lot of positivity in their projects. And we also talked to writer Brandon Easton. Like I said earlier, he's writing for the Vampire Hunter D comic book. And I guess I will segue to...
Do you want to...
Yeah.
Oh, is that what I'm sorry? I'm like, all right, I better step in this time.
Don't worry, brother, I didn't forget about you. And last but not least, Jason Lethert. Take it away.
Well, this will be quick, so you don't have to worry, because I only attended Sunday, so I'm probably going to have the briefest of the group here. But I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it at all, so I wasn't really planning on making it, and then I was able to pull off Sunday. I had wanted to do Saturday, so I think I'll start just briefly with the panels that I wanted to attend. There were a couple really cool sounding ones. Street Fighter 50th anniversary. I'm a big fan of what? 30th. Sorry. Don't make us older than we need to be. Big fan of video games, and I'm not really a huge fighter game per se, but I'm a really big fan of the history of our nerdy topics, and video games is a big one, especially being as old as I am and having been around when home video games or even arcade games were kind of becoming a big thing or whatever. I love the history of it, so I thought that one was going to be pretty cool. There were a couple other panels that I was pretty interested in. One of them was the Deadpool panel. I think it was on the new graphic novel, but I was sure that Rob Liefeld would probably, he was going to be one of the guests, so it was going to be a pretty good panel, and I thought for sure he might drop a little tidbit or two about the in-works Deadpool sequel movie. That was really the only reason why I wanted to go to that, but alas, no. Another one was that I wanted to go on, was probably a little bit outside of what you guys would gravitate towards. Tarzan, Barsoom, and Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc. What's next? And, again, mentioning the history, I'm a big fan of history. And one thing that I'm, very fascinated by is what they call the platinum age of superheroes. And if you haven't heard of that, that is, everybody knows that the golden age of superheroes begins with Action Comics #1 and Superman. And yet, of course, that technically is not the starting point for a lot of the superhero elements. And so, obviously, some of those, there were some comic characters that had some of those elements that appeared before.
Are we going to Gilgamesh or something like that?
Well, if you want to go back far enough, yeah. But you certainly would at least go back to the pre-Superman comics, and then also some of the other types of media at the time, specifically the pulp novels, I guess they would call them, even though they weren't book format, they're in magazine format. That's why they called them the pulps or whatever. And then even radio, because if you are talking about the history of the comic superhero, in my opinion, you cannot discuss that fully without including the Shadow, Tarzan, the Phantom, the Green Hornet. And yes, if you really want to go back in your history, eventually it would go back to Achilles and Hercules and Gilgamesh and all kinds of other myths and legends. But you have to at least include, the early 19th century mediums. So I personally am always interested in that. And like, even when the Tarzan movie came out, like a year or two ago, I was like amazed. I'm like, every couple of years, this property still comes back, and it's so anachronistic. And to me, I would assume unattractive to, the younger kids and such. And yet it's just got such a powerful, I think, mythic element. And maybe it's not just the kids, older people, we've spent so much time with that being an iconic character. I just find that interesting, and I love paying tribute to the forefathers. So that was one I would have wanted to have gone to. But like I said, I only went up on Sunday, and so I only caught a few panels. The main panels that I was really interested in catching were one other one that I missed was just to recap that was The Art of Movies or something. I don't have the exact name of the title, but I recognized two of the guys that were on the panel, Benton and Anson Jew. I don't know if you've ever heard of those guys before. I always see those guys down at Artist Alley at Comic-Con. And so I always feel like I know them because I've seen them there like at least, 4 or 5 years probably and in a row. Right. And so I and I don't know their art very well. I don't read their comics or whatever, but I like their art style. I know it's pretty cool. And I didn't know. I'm reading the program catalog for WonderCon. I didn't know that these guys also do illustrations, real illustrations for movie concept development. And so both of them had worked on Wonder Woman and brought Wonder Woman concept art to the panel, and I thought that would have sounded very cool. And I was just also very tickled to find out that these guys that it's so easy to put people in a box, because we're trying to figure out who everybody is in this vast and diverse market, and you're like, okay, that's the Lego comic book art guy or whatever, or that's that's that Livio guy, that's the Japanese robot mecha transformer type of art style guy or whatever. And it's always, I think, fun and interesting, and and catches me off guard when when my stereotypes are broken or whatever. So I think that's a good thing. But going on to the panels that I did attend, like I said, I only attended a couple, and the top two panels that I really wanted to attend were the Kids WB 90s cartoon flashback. I'm a big 90s cartoon fan. A lot of people don't realize it, but one of the greatest years of comic superhero cartoons was like 95, when there were like over a dozen shows every week coming out with new episodes. It was just absolutely amazing. I see you, Joel.
What cartoons came out during that period?
All right.
During 95. It was like,
We started with Batman.
Okay. Batman,
X-Men.
animated series, yes.
Spider-Man, the animated series.
Yes.
And now, pardon?
The Tick.
The Tick.
Sick.
We had the Marvel Action Hour, which added Iron Man and Fantastic Four.
Right.
Wildcats.
Forgot about the Wildcats.
Ultra
Cartoon.
Force.
Nuts.
The Max on MTV.
That's
Pardon?
I said yeah, and
One of the greatest adaptations of all. I mean, if you talk of literally taking the actual page and making that move, that is one of the greatest adaptations. That opening shot, I've literally never seen even the construction of a comic book panel done into multimedia. That's one that you can't forget if you're looking at superhero adaptations. I'm sorry, Dan.
was that other show on MTV that they turned into a live action?
Aeon Flux?
Flux?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Technically not a comic book before, but I would count it because she is one badass superhero, no doubt. Love that. The shorts and the half-hour version, great shows. Really bummed that got canceled. Same with Max. I don't know why they didn't
Did
go
you
with the
mention
second season.
Superman and Justice League?
Right. Okay. So then Superman followed Batman. Then the Justice League followed that. Justice League would have been 2000, or after 2000. So it wouldn't be for my special year of 94 or 5 or whatever it is. I got to actually research that out and do it. But I remember living through it at the time and having to go to the store every week to buy videotapes to keep up with these episodes. Did we mention Wildcats? We
Yes.
did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think there's still a couple more, but maybe just let it go at this point. But obviously, I mean, if you grew up any time before that, it was pretty obvious what a huge swing that was, because I went from wanting to find superhero cartoons so bad that I was going to, and couldn't find anything either on TV or on VHS, that I was going to video rental stores and renting out old VHS tapes of Marvel cartoons from the 60s and 70s and dubbing them.
The old Superman cartoons, the black and whites, and absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And then suddenly it was a true golden age or maybe silver age, because I guess technically the late 60s were the first golden age for superhero cartoons. But so I love that, the Kids WB cartoon flashback. Now, it was timed because they're coming out, as sometimes these panels are, they're coming out with a DVD set of the Zeta Project. And that was the primary focus of the show, which Zeta Project, if anyone doesn't remember, that was a spin-off from the Batman Beyond.
I can't remember. Yeah.
Okay. Now one thing I didn't remember.
That's the android, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. An android whose owner, he's a murder android. He's kind of actually a little bit similar to Scud the Disposable Assassin, even in his character design.
Gotcha.
But also in that they're killer robots who are given like I think an emotion chip in for him or something, and has a conscience and decides to rebel against his evil bosses or whatever. One thing I didn't know at the time, because who knew who this guy was, but the voice of the Zeta Project was Diedrich Bader. From Office Space and the Drew Carey Show, which I guess the Drew Carey Show was on at the time that came out. But I mean, he was not exactly, I don't think, as big a name as he is now. So that kind of surprised me. But also they had Phil LaMarr from Static Shock, and that was the other featured cartoon there, and that was pretty cool. And have you guys ever talked to Phil LaMarr?
I have. actually,
Yeah.
a couple times. Really nice guy.
Yeah, he is a super nice guy. Now, I didn't talk to him at this panel, but I remember back when, God, this is a while ago, Daredevil came out, the movie, the Ben Affleck movie. I went up to one of those LA Comic Cons, those little small ones they have kind of frequently, and because I got an interview with Mark Steven Johnson, and I was pretty excited about that. So I was walking the con, and I saw a couple people, that I'm like, oh my God, that would be cool to talk to him. And one was Phil Lamar, and so I approached a couple people, and Phil was so nice and gracious, gave me more time than I was really wanting. We just kept talking or whatever, and just a great interview. I also saw Brian Posehn.
That guy will stop for a photograph anywhere in San Diego if you catch him at Comic-Con. I see him every year, and we've taken the same photo every single year. It's one over the shoulder look to me, and with a little bit of a smirk. And every single year I run into him, and he's gracious and he's funny, and he'll talk to you for a little bit. Brian Posehn's the man. I love that guy.
I love him too. Now, this is a while ago, obviously, so it was before he was, but I recognized him from, his nerd, type of routines and stuff. And so I approached him. Now I was there heavily covering Daredevil. And so I told him I was doing a story on Daredevil, and I think it was either Daredevil. I might even just said comic adaptations in general. I forget, because I probably wouldn't have gone as specific as Daredevil. But still, it was not attractive enough, because he's like, I go, do you have any, would you, have any comments you'd like to share, whatever? And he's like, no. Turned away. I'm like, all right, I got to work on my pitch, I think. But Phil Lamar, it was great to see him again. It was I noticed he's got some gray coming in, so I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it's probably 14 years.
If I might interject.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Phil Lamar, if for those of you who are into Samurai Jack, he's the voice of on there, and he has a pretty cool podcast interview with Beth Accomando on the Cinema Junkies podcast. If you guys want to check that out.
When was that from?
It's pretty recent. It's about the Samurai Jack coming back.
The reboot?
The reboot.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah, he is, actually kind of legendary in voice acting.
Green
Now,
Lantern, I think, as well.
Oh, yeah, great.
Futurama.
Yeah.
Futurama.
Yeah, he pops up in a ton of stuff. I mean, but Green Lantern, that's kind of a big one for us nerds. His Jon Stewart Green Lantern was fantastic, but he also does a lot of live action stuff too. So I mean, he's a
Pulp Fiction.
yeah. Oh God, I
He was
forgot about
Marvin.
that. He's the guy that
Marvin.
watches Sam Jackson do the speech and kill his buddies or whatever, the furious anger speech or whatever. Yeah.
Ezekiel 25:17.
Nice, Dan, with the trivia. I'm impressed, Dan. So I loved that panel. It was great, and then in the audience, they referenced the guy who composed. He wasn't on the panel, but the guy who composed the theme for Batman Beyond, which I think is like a super. That is one of the most important, not greatest, though it is awesome. One of the most important opening credit sequences of all time, because
I love that one. Yeah. That's pretty good.
but it's not just because it's great. If you were a nerd at the time it came out, there was a ton of anxiety in the nerd community about this show, because they were canceling our beloved TAS, Batman the Animated Series, and they were relaunching this thing that sounded Batman as a kid in the techno future. It just sounded like the worst network exec by committee decided thing to sell toys in the world. And we we're like, well, the guys are behind it though. It's like Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and all the guys from the Timverse, the animation guys, Burnett and all those guys. But so you're like, well, it should be good, but it sounded terrible. And I remember when that opening credits started, it blew me away in my chair. I had no idea that I would ever see such a dark and hard-edged music, as well as that opening visuals in that. And I mean, it gave it to me instant credibility. I'm like, okay, I will sit through this entire episode and this entire probably first season to give you a chance and see what this is all about. I mean, I feel like that was important, that opening credits. Joel, were you going to pop in there?
Absolutely. It felt very Dark Knight, honestly. Like Return of the Dark Knight. It felt very... I mean, they got it right. They took something, we really love the animated series, and they move on to, Batman Beyond, and they did a quality job. They did it right, and they gave the fans what they wanted, didn't disappoint. So all in all, no, I love that series. I hope they bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they bring it back.
Well, it's, and they have. They brought it back in the Joker, Revenge of the Joker, right. Direct to DVD. And then they also, I think they had a few Batman Beyond appearances in Static Shock and such. So that's cool. So the door could be open.
If they were to do it, if they were to put it back on TV, I'd watch it. I think I'd watch it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I DVR now, not sitting in front of the TV anymore, but I'd definitely watch it.
God, I spent way too many Saturday mornings in college getting up for it.
Right, no more VHS tapes. I just DVR.
Yeah, right. Oh God, that was like I'd have storage rooms. I literally bought a VHS to DVD recorder to try and record down my stuff. So now I've just got stacks of DVDs, which is not much better because you still can't find anything in there. The other panel that was a big one for me was the psychology of superheroes. And I found that because I was searching out the Lawalds, and I think we talked about them from San Diego Comic Fest. Right. They are, Eric Lawald is the story editor of X-Men the Animated Series from the 90s, and his wife Julia wrote one of the episodes, The Days of Future Past, Part 1, I think. And so I knew that they were going to be there. And so I started out, when I was looking through the schedule, I started out looking for him. And I'm like, I'm doing all these search terms like X-Men the Animated Series, and nothing is turning up. And finally I found them, and I found out why. It's because the panel wasn't about the shows. It was about this. They were part of the psychology of superheroes, which included two Batman writers, though in cartoons, these guys write for 100 different shows. But and then it had, and this was very cool for me because I'm like, this is something I want to look into down the road. They had an actual psychologist psychologist or psychiatrist, I'm not sure, who she focuses on superheroes, and she's got this.
Is this Arcane? Was it
Arkham?
Yeah.
She was at
The Arkham Sessions is what it's called. It's a pot. Yeah.
Comic Fest a couple years back.
Really?
Yeah.
Not this last one though.
No, she wasn't.
And did you see her panel?
Yeah, I actually went to her panel, and it was pretty cool. So
yeah, I was fascinated because
she shows some clips of like an episode, and then she like dissects it's the whole.
Do you
thing.
remember any of the heroes she covered? Because my one drawback is she's totally DC centric, and which I love. I love it all. That's my rule. Is I love everything about comics, and specifically everything about superheroes. But I am, when I was a kid, I was a Marvel zombie. So I'm like, I wanted to ask her about Apocalypse and stuff, and then I looked at her podcast, and it's like, okay, this is like 90% DC, and mainly Batman animated series episodes.
Yeah. I think at the time she talked about Joker and Harley.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, those are two obvious ones you'd want to hit, right?
Pretty sure she'll probably have some panels during Comic-Con, so
yeah,
keep an eye out for her.
And I figure she's got to get into Marvel more because she's almost out of Batman the Animated Series episodes to analyze, so she's going to have to start looking for new stuff. But that was fascinating because, when I approach my analysis to comic books, I approach it with all the seriousness of a scholar that would be, talking about the War of 1812 or whatever. And so to see someone with that additional, knowledge and expertise, to be able to really wax on it, that was fascinating. And afterwards I found her website, and, I will definitely look for her at Comic-Con. And maybe I can egg her on into, because I really want to show her some X-Men, or have her do some X-Men the Animated Series episode. And she did some clips during the presentation of Proteus. She did a great clip of Proteus and his emotional moment that he had or whatever. As far as Aaron had put on there, people I interviewed, and the one thing at that Kids WB flashback was I got to interview that the guy who composed the theme song. So they stopped it at the very beginning and they pointed him out and he stood up and I couldn't see him. I'm shooting with my camera. I'm shooting the dais and I can't see him. And everybody's clapping and I'm just like, to hell with it. And I just jerked up, blocking the people behind me so I could see the guy, get a good visual read on him. And then after the panel, even though I was hustling to the psychology of superheroes, I'm like, I cannot pass this up. So I flagged the guy down. His name is Christopher Carter, Christopher with a K. I was almost like, what, the guy that created the X-Files?
Right.
Chris Carter?
The wide receiver for the Vikings?
Yeah, right. Oh, of course, that Chris Carter too, yeah. And so I tracked him down, and he was talking to this woman, and I didn't know if that was like someone he was with, his wife or daughter or something like that. And so I'm sitting there, and they're just talking aimlessly, and I'm like, oh my God, this next panel's starting. And finally, I blurted in. It turned out, no, she was just a random fan that had gone up to him too. So he's like, yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you. And so I got a little brief interview talking to him about the theme for Batman Beyond. And I'll give you one little tidbit here just for the Hall H podcast here, because I haven't cut this together in a video yet. So This is an exclusive.
All right. Hit me, man.
Well, I asked him, I'm like, how did that come about and everything? And he goes, well, I was meeting with them. And at the time, this show was just starting to develop. But I was just meeting with them to do, composing work in general. And when we started talking about this show, they're like, hey, we love what you do with the orchestraic stuff, but this is a different show, this Batman Beyond. It's going to be future, edgy, techno, maybe a little metal-y or whatever. And so we're just not sure that's your style. And so they came to an agreement to have him do him and I think another composer, do some audition tracks. And one of those audition tracks was the theme song that we all know. I mean, I was completely blown away by how happenstance, what I felt was like such a critical, important step to the selling of that show to the audience, at least to the non-5-year-old audience, the high school and college age comic fans or whatever. I couldn't believe it. I thought this would have been something like that they had really planned out and everything, and no. And then he mentioned also, because he's like, nicest guy in the world. He almost was like, I'm like, stop avoiding taking credit for the talent of your work here. This is really good stuff. I'm trying to compliment you. And he's like, well, the other guys helped out so much too. And one of the things he mentioned was the visuals. And I think obviously we're all really love that opening visual sequence as well. And I did not know that that was designed by Darwin Cook, the late great Darwin Cook, who just passed away last year. I went to his tribute panel at Comic-Con. I knew that he had been working for Batman or the Warner Brothers cartoon division and done stuff on Batman the animated series. So it didn't, shock me, but I did not know that. And so I thought that was a cool little tidbit too. So that was really fun for me to be able to revisit, some 90s, just the golden age of 90s superhero cartoons.
If you ever meet the guy that did the X-Men theme song, I want to punch that guy in the face because it gets stuck in my head and I can't get it out of my head. So if
I actually let me mention two things about that. One is I just found out that I have yet to verify this, but it was because I think it was on a forum thread or something. Haim Saban, the co-owner of Saban Entertainment, right, the entertainment company that bought the Japanese footage of Power Rangers and then produced an American version to be cut into the action scenes. They also produced X-Men the animated series. Apparently, Haim Saban loves to compose music, and under a pseudonym, he did music for the X-Men animated series. And I was just like, wow, that was a weird little thing from out of left field. But one thing people always focus on the excuse me, on the theme, the in episode music of X-Men is still so great. I would buy that on CD. There are so many killer episodes that I think that that was a big, huge part. So everybody knows that theme song. It's very iconic, and who doesn't like that? But you're right. It can be a little annoying stuck in your head.
I take back my previous statement. I didn't know it was Haim Saban. I guess I can't really punch that guy in the face at this point. He's Power Rangers will come kill me.
So that was my highlight.
Cool. I guess we can probably just wrap up our WonderCon coverage with, I guess, looking about what things they can improve for next year. And I'll just briefly run down my my notes for the talkback panel. Let's see here. Obviously, the talkback panel is usually with John Rogers, president of Comic-Con International. And surprisingly, this talkback panel was about 9 minutes long in length.
Why?
I guess
People ran out of questions, or
no, it's just,
they ended it.
They didn't have a lot of bad things to say.
It was just talk, back.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So basically, the first person, this is a woman. She loved the fact that the badges were mailed out ahead of time, and that you didn't have to just go there and pick it up. She would like to see the Anaheim police sort of help direct traffic, especially on Saturdays, and especially at the intersection of Convention Way and I believe Harbor. She said that pedestrians were sort of in danger of being hit. She thought the Screen Junkies live and the Honest Trailers movie, I guess, fights panel could have been in a bigger room. But overall, she said it was a well-run convention. Her and her family go to WonderCon more so than San Diego Comic-Con because I guess the SDCC crowd is just too much for them. The second person that came up and asked was a friend of Comic-Con, friend of CC's, Michael P. He said he loved the exhibition floor, and he said he bought so many things because it was so easy to get around. So, and those obviously, we all were there, and there was a lot of elbow room.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. The next person said he had trouble finding parking, and he got stuck on a harbor in between the hotels, and wished there was someone who would have let the public know that you could not park at the hotel anymore.
I also found that very, very frustrating. I literally drove around for at least 20 minutes. And I mean, just literally covering the same. I had no idea where, and I had looked at the map before I went up there, and I kind of had it in my head, and I thought I understood. And I was so frustrated. I missed a panel because I'd gotten up in time to make that panel or be a few minutes late into it or something. It took me 20 minutes just to find a place to park at least, because at one point I stopped and got out of my truck and my car and at 7-Eleven and was asking strangers if they could give me some advice or whatever. But that was frustrating, and yeah, I was a little bummed about that.
So speaking about parking, obviously we tried to check in early at our hotel, but we couldn't. So we were sort of in a
the hotel wouldn't let you?
Yeah, because they were limited on parking. They're waiting for people to check out so that we can get in. But so we were sort of in a little conundrum. But our friend Dan Barry came in to rescue us. He got us into the Disney parking because he's a season pass.
Nice.
So we were look at what 10-minute walk away from the convention center. So it's not too bad.
I was gonna say whatever was happening across from the convention center. Disney something or other. They need to close that down when WonderCon is there and just let the con people have their way and just and
Or
shut that part down.
break, so
Spring break too.
yeah.
And so let's see here. The next person also said that when he got out of the arena, nobody was there to sort of direct people where to go. So it's like, okay, where do we go now? Just like a bunch of people just going in different directions. So he also mentioned that there's a Chinese restaurant on Catella, and he said for like less than $10, you can get a decent lunch. And he said that should have been added to the map as well.
Well, then you'd never be able to get in.
I've personally been there, and it's sketch. I mean, the food was good, but it's sketch. It's hot as heck in there, and luckily they have beers, but you're sitting right next to the warmers and the food's-
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, that's where you're going to get your best ethnic food is in the sketchier places.
And he also ended his.
But Panda Express, is that you got your endorsement?
I'm looking more for a Payway or a P.F. Chang's somewhere.
A Jack in the Box
upscale.
teriyaki bowl. Jeez, man, come on now.
I'm fancy. I want fancy LA food. Fancy LA
Pick
food.
up sticks.
I'll take pickup sticks.
Who doesn't like pickup sticks? Come on.
And he ended his session with saying that it'd be cool if there was a map, showing how to get to the parking structure. The next person
Or
was
signs.
Yeah, exactly.
How about some signs on the road? I mean, even that stuff confused the heck out of me. There was one where it said, parking, turn left on, what's the main road when you get off the highway? Catella. Turn left on Catella. I was coming from the north on the cross street because I'd been driving all around. I was coming back to Catella to give it another shot. It said, turn left on Catella. That just brought me back to the highway. I mean, even the light up sign on there was like confusing me. It was tough.
I think they're building a parking structure there, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I think hopefully in the next couple of years, when that's done, it'll be a lot easier, and maybe people have, we can all park in one spot as opposed to trying to hunt for,
Fingers crossed,
for
yeah.
parking spaces.
the next person complimented WonderCon and San Diego Comic-Con on accessibility. She said, I guess my video sort of cut out, so I kind of just pieced together the rest of what she said. She said that I guess someone that she goes there with is disabled, and I guess they've done a pretty good job in making sure that disabled people have a pretty good experience and that they feel safe, especially with line management and all that stuff. The next person, I thought this one was pretty interesting. He said that it'd be cool if there were more updates on Twitter, for example, especially during badge sales, letting the public know that on whatever certain day that it was like 60% sold, rather than you get a notice saying, "Oh, Friday sold out." So like little increments of updates.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be pretty interesting. And he said that he loved that it was back in Anaheim. Actually, several people actually said that, not only at Talkback but outside.
And for those that aren't aware, it 1 year went to. It's been in Anaheim for 5 years or more, and but there was 1 year where they went to the LA. Last year they went to the LA Convention Center, which LA Convention Center is notorious for being a pain in the ass and difficult and no parking and tough to walk around to get to.
And originally, I think it was in San Francisco.
Yes, it was. In fact, I went. I've been up there. I think it was right at that same year. I was doing a ton of con stuff that the one I met Phil Lamar that year. I actually was on a panel up at the San Francisco WonderCon at Moscone Center.
This next person said that he was impressed. He was a SDCC vet. Obviously, we just mentioned San Francisco. This was the first time he was at WonderCon in Anaheim since it's left San Francisco, so interestingly enough. Mm-hmm. And what he liked about this convention was the smooth and sort of accessibility of the overall convention, how it was well run. He liked the Jack Kirby panel. He said he gained a lot of insights on the professional presentation of certain panels, such as the IndieWire's fan favorites showrunners panel, the Make a Nerdy Living panel, and the Nerdist panel. And however, he wishes that the social media accounts of the panelists would all be displayed like after the panel was over on screen, so that he could take note and follow up with them later on. Although I guess he talked about the high quality of these panels, but I guess he attended the Star Trek, Next 50 Years panel, but he said he didn't enjoy it as much because it was off topic based on whatever description that they came up with. So I don't know.
He didn't elaborate on what specifically they covered that was off topic?
No. He just said that whatever description was in the program didn't match what they were talking about in the panel. And they sort of went off script maybe, or sort of just, he said they were having a good time, but, I didn't really get anything from the panel. And then lastly, Michael P. comes up again, and he sort of reiterates that it'd be cool, to have more social media contacts, probably not only in the panel, but also maybe in the app as a link to click on. So that'd be pretty cool. And I think that was a pretty good suggestion, actually, from Michael P. How about you guys? What do you think could be improved for next year's WonderCon? I guess we can start with Alex.
I guess for me, I guess for almost any con I go to, it's always like seating, like tables to eat or just to relax. And looks like they had plenty of space to put out some extra tables or couches or benches for people to sit down and relax, which is always an issue at almost every convention we go to. So that's my only thing. Overall, it's pretty good, pretty well-run show. So that's about it.
Dan?
Nothing I can think of.
Yeah?
One thing I'd like to compliment them on, and maybe and if guys feel free to correct me if I'm
You're wrong.
speaking out of if I'm incorrect on Comic-Con San Diego, because when I go, I'm usually pretty focused, and the only thing I like do that's not focused is the wandering around the floor part. But usually I'm like trying to go and get somewhere, go to a panel, find someone to interview, and so I miss a lot of stuff. So if I miss this, let me know. But one thing I loved about WonderCon was that food truck row. They had all those food trucks there, right there, and I'm like, oh my God. Now, yeah, maybe that's a bummer for the local businesses because that's gonna take a big chunk out, but the convenience level, just be able to step outside of the place and all those food trucks right there. Do we have something like that for San Diego? Okay, so I'm seeing some head shaking, so I'm not crazy. I thought maybe there was just some spot that I just have never gone to over by Qualcomm or not, Petco or
Although as a HallH.com exclusive, if you go to the back of the convention center where the elevator is, there's a pretty cool food truck there that has some awesome fish tacos.
Now, I have seen that truck, but I think you had just mentioned it to me recently as like a recommended thing or whatever, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll have to check that out.
It's really a discreet location. It's like our own little, not a lot of people know about it.
Well, I loved the variety of really high-end stuff they had at WonderCon. And if you're a San Diego food truck aficionado, not that I am, but I do like them, no expert, but you may have heard of Devilicious. Yes. And I was shocked to see Devilicious up there. I didn't know if maybe they opened up an LA truck too. I don't know. But the people that used to own that, the people that created
Witch Addiction.
Yeah. You know that.
Yes.
Have you been there?
I haven't been there, but I've had them delivered to my old work in Mira Mesa quite a
Because
bit.
I work in Mira Mesa.
Okay.
And I work right by that. Yeah. And I'm actually, if you ever go in there, I'm on the wall of addicts. My picture, if you make it through the entire menu, you are on the wall of addicts. And so I got my picture on the wall. Well, so they came to fame with Devilicious from doing that thing, right? And that was their first brick and mortar location.
And they have two now.
Right. Because that one just skyrocketed. I mean, the place that used to be there, Taste of Boston, I mean, I never saw cars in the parking lot. Witch Addiction, you go there and there's like a line. It's almost like a Hodad's line almost.
Wait, so they're in UTC area?
Yes, they are on Mira Mesa Boulevard, about a mile or two east of the 805.
Okay, wow.
Right by my work. In fact,
awesome.
Next time we do a podcast there, we can go to lunch there.
Okay.
And you'll love it. I mean, we'll have to check to see how late they're open on Saturdays. But, I mean, they just added craft beer last year and everything. I mean, it's a really cool place.
Awesome.
Well, so they had risen to, prominence to open that location off of the success of Devilicious. Well, one of the signature elements, I just love this, so I got to mention it, one of their food items that became kind of iconically identified with them was their lobster grilled cheese sandwich.
So good.
Yeah, it's pretty badass. As you can imagine, it's a rich taste experience. Maybe too rich for some. But so me and one of my coworkers were talking about, because we had found that out, that they had, and they have actually sold the trucks now. They don't do the trucks because their brick and mortar is doing so well. So someone else does it, but they do the same menu and everything. So we asked the Witch Addiction people, like, when can we do the lobster? And I just happened to go there one day when the main woman chef, was at the counter, because it was right after the rush, so they were like slowing down. And so I asked her, and I go, when are we going to be able to get the lobster grilled cheese? Do I have to search out the food truck for that? And she's like, we will never, ever, ever serve a lobster grilled cheese as long as I'm running this place. And we're like, yeah, what's that all about? What did a lobster grilled cheese ever do to you? And she's like, oh, no. It's a great set. Everybody loves it. But I have made so many of those in my life. I will never make one again. It was all about the art of it. You know, she's like, as an artist, I've got to do some new gourmet sandwiches. I can't do that anymore. So
That's awesome.
So that was great to see that. And maybe if, Comic-Con, obviously they couldn't do it right on the mall there. They don't have the same shape mall that they do at WonderCon. So, I mean, they could to the east or behind it or whatever, but not right stepping out in front of it. It's too narrow of a strip, right? But it would be cool if they stepped that up a little bit because, God, I mean, it's always a big wrestling match in my mind when I go, okay, do I settle for con food or do I try to go somewhere? And if I go somewhere, is it going to be less than an hour and less than 10 or 15 bucks anyways? So what's the point? And so that would be cool. That would definitely be cool.
Was there other food trucks did you try?
No, I didn't. But I did stop and check out some of the menus, and a lot. I mean, there were several ones where I was like, oh yeah, if I wanted it right now in a heartbeat, I would have done it. My one other thing. Now this is I would never bring this up in a talkback session because I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but I just think it's kind of funny because we just attended Comic Fest. I don't know. Were you at Comic Fest?
No, I did
Okay.
not, yes.
Well. So I'm looking at the scheduling, the program schedule, and I now granted I didn't even look at Friday because I knew I wasn't gonna go Friday. I knew I was either gonna go Saturday and Sunday or just Sunday. So I was looking at there, and I was kind of surprised because it felt like I was hunting around for. Now maybe I got specific tastes, but and I'm whatever I do. But I was hunting for panels to be interested in, and I did end up finding at least half a dozen to a dozen that I wanted. Yeah, just less than a dozen that I wanted to go to. So it wasn't like there wasn't anything or anything like that. But just having it fresh in my mind, San Diego Comic Fest, I even posted this on Dunford's, Matt Dunford, the chairman's Facebook page. I was like, that one, I had to turn down like 10 panels that I wanted to do because they were conflicting with 10 other panels that I wanted to do. I mean, that was the most excruciating experience trying to, Sophie's choice it through those options. And well, okay, WonderCon, at least I didn't have as agonizing experience picking which panels to go to. So I was a little surprised at that, but hey, that's just, how it works out. So it doesn't really mean anything long-term, I don't think.
Yeah. Joel?
All in all, I really wasn't disappointed with WonderCon. I loved it a lot. I've loved it for the past few years. I think this year they've even gotten bigger. I think they got beefier a little bit. They had more vendors there, quality vendors that you see, at WonderCon. You see the same vendors there at WonderCon that you see at Comic-Con. So, they put on a really, really quality show. I would like to see, more panels and more diverse type of panel. I would love for the hours to be longer. I mean, more content going into the evening with WonderCon. Other than that, no, it's a great experience. I love going every year, and it's a good warm up to Comic-Con. And like I said, being a sister convention, they put on a quality show that's controlled by the Comic-Con people. So everything from, like I said, vendors to artists and writers and the companies that show up. It's a great show. The one thing I always tell people though is being so close to LA, being so close to Hollywood, I wish they would ramp up that celebrity presence, at WonderCon more. And I know it's a big gripe with some people. Some people would rather have more of a traditional con as opposed to the monster that Comic-Con is at this point. But I kind of like the monster, at least a little bit. So you get a lot of good TV shows and online things going on at WonderCon, but not like the Peter Jackson or the the Star Wars cast coming or something. I'd love to see something huge like that come to WonderCon and kind of put them on the national map. You know what I mean? Along the same vein, or in the same vein as Comic-Con. So that'd be my only gripe. Being so close to LA, why can't they bring in more Hollywood star power?
That's kind of makes me wonder if WonderCon did grow to the size of a San Diego Comic-Con, could that area support it?
I don't know, probably not. Probably not, and I don't know what area could. They'd have to turn people away, or they'd have to really tailor their content if it got that big.
It technically has been one of the venues that has been in the rumor mill for, I mean, I believe the venues that we hear about it possibly leaving to would be to go to Las Vegas, Anaheim, LA. Am I missing any, Dan?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Because I don't think that in the southwest corner of the country there's really any other spots that would be better, or I mean, be able to handle those numbers. And I'm getting this, by the way, from reading Mark Evanire's blog, because he, it's not as big a deal anymore because he's totally calmed my nerves. But like back in 2012 or something, I was like, oh my God, they're gonna lose Comic-Con, and I'd go read his blog, and he'd be like, calm down, Jason. Well, not to me directly, but, on his blog. And he'd be like, this, I'm worried too, but a lot less than most people are because of X, Y, and Z. And he just laid it out. And he's like, okay, if you look at, each venue, they've got huge drawbacks.
Chargers.
Pardon?
Chargers.
Yeah. Right. And the one that I recall for Anaheim was part of it was that you've got such sprawl. It's kind of like an urban sprawl. So it's like to handle those numbers, it really helps to have the gas lamp to people to be able to go out. And it's like, because, listen, I love the food trucks, WonderCon. But that ain't going to handle, a Comic-Con level crowd for food. They're going to need to go out to restaurants and get away from other people and such. And that's where it becomes a little bit tricky because that's such a Disney, controlled urban sprawl where you can't really just start walking places and find nice dining establishments. You'll find a sketchy Chinese restaurant here and there, but
For the record, I ate there. Okay, just for the record,
and he did not get sick, and he enjoyed it. So
Downtown Disney has tons of restaurants.
oh, okay.
And that's open to the public.
Then maybe I wonder if that was developed more after I had read these blogs, or if that just was taken into consideration but still felt insufficient. I don't know. I remember that Evanier was talking about how you can't really get around and go many places walking and to do much stuff after you leave the convention center or whatever. But that
And there's a huge movie theater there too. So
I can tell you one thing. I can tell you the Anaheim Convention Center, it seems a lot bigger, or it seems huge. It really does. I mean, if you go down into the other halls, and when, especially the ticketing hall and the autograph line hall, it's a huge empty space that feels like the another just as big as the exhibit floor. So I mean, it seems like there's a lot of space in Anaheim as far as if it got that big and the size of Comic-Con. I mean, every facility is going to reach capacity sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
Comic-Con has reached capacity, and if WonderCon grows, then yes, it's going to reach capacity, and we'll have this discussion again about whether or not it's going to move or some other place that'll fit. I think they have room to grow. I think they could bring in more people. I think that they can, it can be more popular. Not that it's not right now, but I think they do have a lot of leeway and a lot of things that they can improve and to grow just in general.
What does that mean for conventions? And Dan, you're the convention expert. Maybe you need to chime in. If they do keep filling up, so let's assume that we can't expand the convention center in San Diego for a couple of years, and so we're basically kind of staying pat at a certain, growth has been capped, ticket sales have been capped, right? And that's it from now on until they expand some space. Then I assume they'll open up an additional X thousand tickets or something, right? Okay, so let's say WonderCon fills out completely. There's still some room for growth there, it sounds like you were saying, at Anaheim Convention Center. Let's say they get to capacity. So, and I, at a certain point, if it keeps growing, it just will have to be capped because, there's no convention center that can, handle, a certain amount of people. What does that mean? Does that mean that do we start just getting more conventions? Like we see, we had such a great time at SD Comic Fest a month or two ago. Do we start seeing smaller ones pop up more? What'll that mean for the marketplace?
I think more and more will pop up, and like NerdCon, which was up at Escondido, which I was with you guys last year. I ran into you guys there.
Right.
What time of year is that in?
That was August. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just after a couple months after Comic-Con.
Which is a small little con, but unfortunately they couldn't raise enough money for this year's con, so they put it on hold.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But talking about the Anaheim Convention Center, they're adding as part of that construction. Roughly, I'm looking at their website, 200,000 more feet. Yeah, 100,000 of it is going to be column-free space, so a whole ballroom type area.
Uh-huh.
And 1,350 more parking spaces they're adding. 10,000 more balcony space and 2 more levels they're adding, and it should be all done by the fall of this year.
Wow! Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, they're leaping ahead of San Diego here. Yeah. I still think there are other reasons why they won't want to go to Anaheim, but I love that
Probably
they're.
the mouse.
Pardon?
The mouse.
Yeah, I mean, either Vegas or Anaheim, suddenly you're not as important as you were before, because obviously the mouse runs that county, and in Vegas you'd be a little pissant, trade show compared to what Vegas does. And Vegas, it's all about the money, and so you would go from being a big fish in a small pond to being, a tadpole.
It'd be kind of interesting to get Rob Salkowitz's take on it. He writes for ICV2 and Forbes, and he sort of combines the business side, with pop culture. So, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to get him on the podcast and see what his take would be.
Definitely. Do a phone-in interview. Where's he based at? Is he in L.A.? Oh, he is. Okay. Or maybe we just need to get Hall H to do a road trip to Emerald Con.
There you go.
As long as it doesn't move to Carson, like our other things, I'm okay.
Cool. I guess I was going to ask this later in our Thunder Round, but since we are on the topic of WonderCon, are there any interesting things that you guys picked up at WonderCon? Alex?
For me, I just picked up a few independent writers and artists. One title is The Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade by Creator's Edge. They got 2 trades out for that, so pick those up. And sharing the same table was another gentleman. He was pushing a comic that his wife wrote, which is Yakuza Rising by Patricia White, and artwork by Kenny Yen. And on my way out, I think it was Saturday, I picked up, I was walking out the convention center during, I think it was around 6:55, and walked by Mad Cave Studios, and they had a comic called Battle Cats. So it looked kind of interesting. So, just pick it up, check it out, give it a good read, see how it goes. And Stephen Frank Silver picked up that issue too. Those are the ones I got.
Anybody else?
I picked up some toys. I mean, more toys than I think I would tell my wife. I picked up at WonderCon. Big on the vinyl toys, and they had a lot there and a lot to choose from. Blind boxes, some bigger things. Batman, Superman, Dark Knight Returns action figure set, which was cool. And a couple comic books and a hell of a lot of pictures. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
I didn't, like Dan, I didn't pick up anything. I went there only one day, and I was running around trying to get as much done as I could. And so I didn't even have that much time to walk the floor, though I did hit it, and I mainly hit Artist Alley. I didn't really have time to hit most of the main floor even, just a couple walkthroughs, so I missed a lot of that. But one thing that was great, I love Artist Alley, and one thing I love is I'm an old school guy. I love the old guys. I love the classic guys, and it's really hard to find them these days, right? And so I wish I would have done something with it, but I didn't. But I did run into Art Thibbert, an inker. Art Thibbert had a spot in Artist Alley, and now, I'm not such an expert on.
Although I think he pronounces his name T-Bear.
Oh, is that right?
I think
oh
so.
My God, yeah. I have I don't know if I mentioned that last time we did the podcast, but I've got a special fascination for all the alternate pronunciations comic fans have, because they read the words, they don't hear them, you know, and how the comics never give you a pronunciation key and all that stuff. Okay, T-Bear?
Yeah.
It must be French. That is so funny to know that I've been mispronouncing it all these times. I mean, if it was a superhero name, then I'd get angry because I'd be like, no, the way I've been pronouncing it is right. So that was cool because now I know that guy because I collected 90s Marvel relaunch after the Onslaught and the Wildstorm guy, not Wildstorm, but all the Image guys.
I think he was part of Extreme, wasn't he? Or wasn't he?
What was?
R.T. Bear? Was he part of that whole Extreme?
He did, but that's not what I'm talking about. His Marvel work after the Image guys left,
right.
or at least their little experiment, post Onslaught experiment ended. Then they relaunched all the core titles.
Speaking of Onslaught, that's what turned me off the comics.
Onslaught?
Yeah, the whole thing.
I don't blame you.
At some point, I know that on the X-Men titles, at least, Jim Lee was doing the layouts, and then Art T-Bear was going in and like finishing up the look of the book. He was.
You're talking about Jim Lee's like original like late '90s run.
Yeah,
of,
like the
X-Men
second
number one, the famous issue.
like volume 2 of X-Men. Like he was doing loose pencils, and T-Bear was going in and doing the rest. So a lot of the work that you see there, I like to think of it more as T-Bear's work than Lee's work.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, I after the Jim Lee and Liefeld and all those guys dropped the core Marvel characters, they relaunched them and they were all pretty damn awesome. And Kurt Busiek wrote a couple of them. He wrote Iron Man and he wrote Avengers, and I think he wrote a third too. But anyways, the Avengers was with George Perez art. It's like Kurt Busiek and George Perez teamed up on a Marvel, huge Marvel book like that. It was just awesome. And so I really got to know, or got familiar with that name, T-Bear, because of his inking on Perez's pencils.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I saw him, and then I brought this all up because I almost bought this, but I'm like, I just figured all I had was my laptop case, which I had, my equipment inside there and cords, and so I thought anything I put in there that's delicate is just gonna get trashed, and so I almost bought it, and I just said, forget it. But I saw Bob Layton at the Artist Alley.
That's the panel I wanted to go to as well.
Oh, yeah. That's, you're right. His panel I wanted to go do too, but I did see him at Artist Alley, and he was signing prints and sketches, and I love the old guys, and I recognized him because I didn't realize it, but I interviewed Howard Chaykin at Comic-Con a year or two ago, and Layton was sitting next to him, and every once in a while they'd be firing little, jokes and rips on each other or whatever. Those guys are cards. Were you going to say something, Joel?
Oh, no.
I saw you nodding.
No, I just love his work. I'm nodding at every single thing that you say because this is like, you're in my head right now.
Okay, well, get this. So now everybody knows that Layton is one half of Michelini and Layton, the legendary Iron Man creative team from the 80s, right? Even in a bottle, we all know it. But I didn't, in comics, they always do just such random stuff. They'll do fill-ins or maybe just covers or whatever. So I'm looking at these prints that he's got out for sale that he's, autographing. And of course, there's several Iron Man ones, like the Hall of Armor and all that stuff. All of a sudden, I see one of my favorite all-time covers, which is Secret Wars #4, in which the top, 70% of the cover is just rock. Solid rock, and then in the bottom third, underneath the rock, is the Hulk holding it up.
I remember that one.
All the heroes beneath them, and then the caption: "Underneath 400 million tons of rock stands the Hulk, and he's not happy." I remember seeing that and just being blown. I'm like, "No way! Is this really happening? That's so cool!" And now, of course, most people would probably remember that Mike Zeck did the artwork or the pencils for the main issues. I did not realize that Layton did that cover. And I just immediately blurted it out. I'm like, "Oh my God, you did that cover?" And he's like, "Yes, I did." And I'm like, "Thank you. I love that cover." So that was nice. And I ended up talking to him, even though it was just that brief exchange. And I didn't stop because I was still trying to get through Artist Alley as quickly as I could just to see who was there. So, and I went back and I couldn't find Tiber anymore. So I didn't get to talk to him. But it's always fun to me to see the guys that have a little history under their belt.
Oh, for sure. Dan, did you pick up anything?
I did not.
Okay. I guess I picked up a couple of prints from one of the people that we follow. He's a friend of the podcast, and we've been following his career since we met him in 2014. Jeff Pasquale from Pasquale Production. He's a watercolor artist, and he recently did a sort of like new versions of his Naruto pieces for Team 7. So I picked up on Naruto, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke. So these are like a new version, so they look pretty sick. I had to pick those up. I also picked up, Alex mentioned this earlier, the Silver comic book. So I'm looking forward to catching up on that. And what else did I pick up?
That's that vampire book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's really dramatic, and I'm looking forward to reading it.
I've heard a lot about it. Looking forward to it.
Right. So I guess this is a good way to get into Art Watch. It's where we give a shout out to some artists or people with other creative people that we follow online or at we see at a convention. I guess Alex can go first.
First person is Lenny. He goes by Lensations on his social media handle. But if you're a big fan of Godzilla, he does some awesome just pencil illustrations of Godzilla and that whole genre right there, and some of the creators of those characters. Another one is Ben Russell. Got a chance to talk to him, chit-chat a little bit that past weekend during WonderCon, just about his new stuff, prints he has out, and some football. I'm a Charger fan, he was a Raiders fan, so we're just talking about football for a little bit.
And we're both licking our wounds.
Oh, yeah. But I think he's at Monster Palooza in Pasadena this weekend. So if you, this podcast will probably be out after that, but he'll be there.
Had you guys considered going to Monster Palooza ever or at all? Is that anything that Hall H would do?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a lot. Looks like that one's really not really artists as far as illustrations, but as far as like costume designers and people in that kind of area of what they really focus on. See Ben Russell, and who else? Jay Brandenburg at Emerald Moon, Treon Indoor on Etsy. If you ever get a chance to check them out, pretty cool Ewok masks that they make. Like I said, he sold out, so congratulations on them. And
who knew the Ewoks had such a devoted following?
So that's about. One more is
how much were those Ewok masks? Can I ask?
Just under $100, $80, $90 around there. Yeah, it's not.
I can see a little kitsch,
They're all handmade too. So.
Oh, really?
He makes them all. One more person is David Barron. Twitter handle at My Zombies. He's coming out with a new book called Stained, which he wrote. Even though he's an illustrator, he's actually on the writer side on this project. Stained at 451.com. You could pre-order it there. That's it for me.
Dan?
Oh.
Well, a couple of artists who I've seen up and down the West Coast at the various cons, and I always say hi and talk briefly. I'm Jay Salvador with SuperEmoFriends.com and Mauricio Abril, MauricioAbril.com. Yeah, there are a bunch of conventions. Their artwork is kind of different than most artwork you see. It's kind of cool to stop by and check out their stuff. And I bought works from them at various cons before.
Cool.
I love Super Emo Friends. That guy always sells out of his prints every con.
Jay is so nice.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy too. Yeah, absolutely. Well, as far as artists go, I mean, there are always like a few guys that I like to visit, like cons, and WonderCon is no different. I always like to visit Dustin Wynn. He's a watercolor artist. He did a little Gotham with DC. Right now, he's got his own book called Descender. I think it's with Image, and really, really great stuff, man. He, like I said, he comes from the Wildstorm stable from back in the day, and for whatever reason, he follows my personal Instagram and likes my pictures. I'm like, I have no idea why you're liking my pictures of my food, my dinner. So nice guy though, puts out some good stuff, has some original artwork there, and some prints always on sale, and does really, really quality work.
Yeah, he just got a Eisner last Comic-Con.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Really?
Nice. He's deserved. That guy's deserved of the Eisner. Does some good stuff.
Oh, sorry, just to interject. Like when I was on the Cup of Tea SDCC hangout with Leonard and Alyssa, we tried to get him on the podcast, but obviously such a large following, we couldn't get in anything edgewise. So maybe next year.
Maybe next year. No, he's a nice guy. I'm sure he'd do it. Another guy that I like to visit, Cheeks Galloway. So you mentioned his name earlier in the podcast, and great artist, very anime like style. If you look at his work, it really looks familiar because he actually helped design some of the Disney Infinity figures. The Hulk figure, the Venom figure. He's gotten shout outs from, I think, Scott Campbell this past year about how his Venom, how Cheeks Galloway's Venom is like how Venom should be drawn, and he's getting some. He works really close with Ryan Benjamin from the Wildstorm Stable too, so they've got some books together as well. And then one guy that's always an Artist Alley, which I don't know why he's still an Artist Alley, is Jim Chung, and Jim Chung, in my opinion, is probably one of the best Marvel artists out there right now. He does everything for Marvel. Very slick style. On par, I really think he's on par with like the higher ups, like the Jim Lees and the Mark Silvestris out there. Really, really, really nice style, clean, a lot of motion in his artwork, and a nice guy. And it's funny because they use his artwork everywhere, and you'll see it everywhere. And you can buy convention sketches from him, I think at like $60 a pop, and very, very low price for a convention sketch. And again, you're getting it from one of the guys in Marvel stable that is doing everything, absolutely everything for them, and drawing absolutely everybody for them. So Jim Chung, if you ever get a chance, check those guys out. So
Cool.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit because you did include cosplayers. So I'm going to, because one cosplayer that I have become pretty enamored with is our good friend of the show, Matt Dunford.
Uncle Dunf.
Yeah,
Himself.
Uncle Dunphy. So, because we had talked a little bit about his cosplaying when we interviewed him for the Hall H podcast a couple of months ago.
Yeah, leading up to San Diego Comic Fest.
Right.
Right.
And now I didn't know Matt before that, and so I didn't really, I'm like, God, he does cosplay every, I'm like, oh wow, this guy really goes all out. And so, but now that we have, we did that interview with him and have been connected with him for a couple of months, and then there's been a couple of events or comic conventions. We just did WonderCon or whatever. He does the most interesting cosplay, because you think, okay, well, is he going to be Captain America or Superman or something like that? And then, he goes as Alistair Hennessy from The Life Aquatic, and then he runs into Steve Zissou's. He ran into 3 different Steve Zissou's from The Life Aquatic at the con, and I'm like, I never would have even considered that. And then when he runs into the Steve Zissou, it's like they got these photo ops, and it's like that was a really cool, and people respond to all these like minor characters. He did Ernest, I think, at WonderCon or whatever. Know what I mean, Vern? I mean, it just it's so off the wall, but
yeah, last year I ran into him WonderCon without knowing it was, and he was his debut of his Weird Al cosplay,
right,
which he nailed. Yeah, accordion and everything.
Right, yeah, he told us about that one. I didn't see pictures or whatever because that was last year. You said, right?
I see pictures of it. I'll send later.
Okay, fantastic. So I've become a huge fan of his cosplay. I don't know how to connect with him online off the top of my head, but I know that you could probably find that by going to SanDiegoComicFest.org, because he was the chairman of that event. So I'm sure he's got contact info on there. An artist, I think I mentioned to you that one guy that I have reconnected with that I knew from back in my college days was a fellow named Dan Wiesenmeyer. I knew him because I bought my comics from him. He owned a comic book shop called Hot Comics and Collectibles in Eagan, Minnesota. I found it when I was in college, and it was the coolest thing for me because he was an artist, and somehow, in an amazing twist of events, he got hired by our friend of the show, Larry Houston, to do storyboards for Graz Entertainment, which was hired by Saban. Saban didn't do much for that show, by the way. They pretty much just contracted it all out. And more power to you, Saban. It worked great. You hired awesome people. But so that was one of the, and he used to put together newsletters. I hope I can still find those newsletters that he would give out to when I go to pick up my comic books, and they'd have like behind the scenes tidbits about the X-Men cartoon, the new episodes that were coming out. And so I just reconnected with him last San Diego Comic-Con at Artist Alley. I was looking around to see who was there and who might be good for interviews, and I said, Wiesenmeyer. I see this name on the Wiesenmeyer, and I'm like, oh my God, Dan Wiesenmeyer. And so I reconnected with him, and he's doing, I forget, but I think he had some prominent like Lego Star Wars artwork.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it was really cool to, see that, he's still in the game, he's still doing it. And I haven't seen him since Minnesota. So, and I moved here in 2000. So that gives you an idea how long ago that was. And yeah, so that was great to see him, and that he's got his own spot at Artist Alley. I'd never saw that coming, and he's doing a lot of comic work and on some big properties. So that was very cool. Dan Wiesenmeyer.
I mean, now that the Lego movie's out and everything. So.
Yeah. God, can you believe how big Lego has become in the last couple of years?
He's gonna big time you.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm glad I got to reconnect and say hi when he would still allow it.
Cool. I guess for me, I'm going to mention his name again, Dave Wilkins. He was nice enough to, like I said, when we were talking to him at the Blitz during the first day of WonderCon, he sort of gave the Wonder Woman poster that he worked on. It was such an awesome illustration. He goes by the Dave Wilkins _ 400-pound ninja on Instagram. That's Dave Wilkins _ 400 LB Ninja on Instagram. Check out his work. He did some awesome illustrations. He's also on DeviantArt, dave-wilkins.deviantart. And Jason threw out a cosplayer. I'm going to do the same. He mentioned Tony Armatis earlier. Like I said, Tony's starting to showcase more of his cosplay and all the different fabrications that he does for his different costumes. So it's interesting to see what he's getting into. Follow him on T Armatis. That's TARMATYS on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And he's also, like I said, an avid cosplayer, and he's a big supporter for the SDCC movement. So give him some love. And the final person I want to showcase on this Art Watch is a vector artist extraordinaire. I think he's like the vector god. I mean, I've said it before. What seasoned vector artists can do in 6 days, he can do in 6 hours. He's that good. It's Orlando Arocena. He's based out in I think Connecticut. Yeah, he's based out of Connecticut, but he grew up in New York. And it was cool that we met him a few years ago when he went to visit Don Thompson in Orange County, and they had got to meet James Gunn for the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So that was pretty cool. He's actually going to be celebrating a birthday tomorrow. Today is the 8th of April. His birthday is on the 9th. So I guess I'll be probably posting this on Wednesday. So if you are a listener to this podcast, show him some love. You can check out his work at mexifunk.com. That's MEXIFUNK.com. He's also Mexifunk on Instagram. On Twitter, he's actually Orlando Arocena. That's ORLANDO AROCENA. On Facebook, he's Orlando Arocena Illustrator. And he has some awesome samples of his work on his Behance page. That's behance.net and / Orlando Arocena. So check him out. You won't be disappointed. And I guess it's time for the Thunder Round, guys. You guys ready?
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, sure.
All right. So if real life was a cartoon, what cartoon universe would you want to live in? guess we'll start with Joel.
You can put me in the Rick and Morty universe because it just gets all nuts in there, and
It's a dangerous universe to live in, by the way.
depending on what universe you're talking about, yeah, multiple universes, it's so much fun, so much fun.
I would have to go. I mean, I've been on the podcast a few times talking about classic stuff, a lot of Marvel stuff, heavy, and I would say that X-Men, the animated series from the '90s, easily, or perhaps the short-lived Fantastic Four series that followed it. Second season is still, I think, one of the great single seasons of all time. Or my DC entry would be Justice League Unlimited. I love everything of the Timverse of all the DC cartoons has all been great, but God, that to me, that's like their Marvel version. I just look at that and I was just like on the edge of my seat during those 2 seasons. I was like, the continuity that they did was just fantastic. It was edgy, just tons of characters, bringing them in seamlessly. That I was so disappointed that didn't, and because people look at Justice League as one cartoon, but I have a hard time doing that because some of the initial incarnations, there's a couple of, and they're all 2-parters, and there's a couple of them that I'm like, oh, Ocean Master, big deal, or, it's ones that didn't maybe quite spark a fire in my heart, and I just feel like it took off when they went to Unlimited, and I don't think it was just because they added the characters. I think it was a conscious decision to do I think the continuity helped. I mean, that last season was just mind-blowing. I mean, some of the plot twists that they had and mixing in Amanda Waller and all these conspiracies and just an amazing revelation with Brainiac at the end. I mean, that series blew me away. I'd say any of those. I think those are among the best that you can produce.
Dan?
The Tix universe.
Nice.
Now, the animated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In the city.
Right. That is classic. I love that show. I love it.
I guess for me, I don't know why, but ever since WonderCon, I've had Transformers in the brain. So ever since talking to Jen and also to Livio, it's like, man, it'd be kind of cool to be a Transformer. So
From which series?
I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't really think about that too far.
I mean, you specified in the question cartoon, not toy line.
I'll go G1 then.
Okay, all right. Well, one of my, which I thought was going to be a highlight, but turned out to not work out, unfortunately, was at the Psychology of Superheroes panel. I flagged down a writer named David Wise after that, and he wrote from the original Transformers show. He was there mainly talking about his Batman the Animated Series work, but he also wrote the original 5-part pilot that was for the Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, this guy has like touched so many iconic cartoons of the yesteryears, and he's still going now too. I shouldn't just peg him as an older guy or whatever, but so yeah, I got to talk to him. We were supposed to do a brief interview on I had a couple of specific topics I wanted to hit him on, and he said he could in a few minutes, and then he was like, I couldn't make it. I'm too busy. So I'm hoping to maybe get him at Comic-Con or a future convention in the area.
Cool. There are a lot of movie adaptations of comic book cartoons these days. Are there any that you think should stay, or maybe should have stayed in an animated format?
I think I'll be the bold Marvel jerk in the group here, because I will state that I mean, if you're talking about the universe of the film, there's nothing that touches MCEU, Marvel, Cinematic Expanded Universe. I mean, even if you don't like all the films or whatever, I mean, it's most people I think would agree that the overall average level of quality in and out, or movie in and movie out, is among the highest we've ever seen. They're the first ones that really have tried to do a universe. you know, and now all of a sudden every other studio is like, we want a shared universe too, you know, with Transformers and all that. So I that just seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I agree. I mean, the overall quality of Marvel's movies are you know, a couple of notches, or if not, whole level up.
Yeah, and
above
I don't.
everybody else's.
It's not like I don't have my criticisms of them
course.
either. I'm not trying to fanboy it up, just blow smoke up their rear. But yeah, I mean, it's just so obvious right now because everybody. It seems like one of the biggest topics in comic movie adaptations is the DC fumbling, you know, and it's tough to get around it because no matter what you think of the movies, everybody kind of seems to have some serious issues with them, even if they disagree on what those issues are. And Zack Snyder is year in and year out becoming one of the most hated men in comic adaptations. I mean, I love the guy. I mean, I used to love the guy. I think Watchmen is one of the greatest films, and I think I've even said that on this podcast before, but something's not working. You know, something's not working.
Well, I think this is. I remember we had another guest on the podcast. His name is Keithan Jones. He's the artist and creator for the Power Knights, and he has his own publishing company called Kid Comics. And we had talked about sort of, you know, just take Superman, Batman, and the whole Justice League animated series, and how, I mean, just look at the color palettes. You know, the Snyder movies are all dark, you know, and it sets a tone and what you expect out of the characters. And with the cartoons and the animated series, it's like there was a contrast between Batman and Superman. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't have both characters be dark.
Right, right.
So I think that's a fundamental flaw that the movies have.
Well, if you ask me, I mean, my opinion is I'm a big capes and underwear guy. So I mean, I need capes, I need underwear, I need the bright yellow outfit, I need the boots with the wings. I mean, so making that transition from cartoons and the comic books into the cinematic universe, where, you know, realistically they couldn't do some of that stuff, and yeah, it was a tough thing for me to accept. But I think some movies did it in the correct way. I think some of the first X-Men movies where they're putting everybody in leather kind of took it overboard, but now that they've kind of softened on that and actually started putting some superheroes in costumes, it's more familiar to me, and I think I'm more accepting of it. But there's a wealth of of source material for them to mine from, as far as characters go. So I'm willing to take the ride. I'm willing to take the ride as long as they want to keep producing movies. I'll watch whatever they put out and make my decision at that point. And I'll be the first to say that I actually liked the first Daredevil movie. You know, I think the costume that he sported in that movie, for me, is a better aesthetic than the one he has in this series. And I know it's not a popular opinion, but
Hey, I think you make a good point.
I think the costume was a little bit better. So, in the end, you know, like I said, I'll ride with them till they stop making them, and then I'll make my judgments at that point.
Cool.
So.
How about you, Dan?
Sorry, what?
Are there any some movies that were adapted from comic books that you think should have stayed in the animated format, or maybe some other properties that it shouldn't make into live action?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
I guess we can go to Iron Fist. Has everybody watched it?
I have not.
I have not either.
I have.
Okay.
And I'm pissed that I haven't, especially since that we're covering that, because I'm like, oh, I totally want to check it out and wax on it, but I just, you know, this week was busy, and this was the week I was like, okay, I'll put it off for a week or two, and I'll get to it at the beginning of March.
Well, I was sort of reminded about Iron Fist because I was a recent podcast guest on another podcast called Dumbbells and Dragons. It's the host is Ken Rotter, and his most recent podcast episode, he talked about his, I guess, his experience with the Tough Mudder. It's like a race, you know, obstacle courses, but he's doing a lot of them this year. But he also talked about Iron Fist, and he had a good conversation with a friend of his. And if you guys want a good little, you know, diatribe on Iron Fist, you know, you should listen to that podcast. But in a nutshell, for me, it's like, you know, I grew up reading the comic books, Power Man, Iron Fist, and I was a big fan. but obviously there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and I guess you can have your opinion on whether Iron Fist could be Asian or white or whatever, but I think fundamentally the story sort of is hurting in different aspects. I mean, for one, the character Danny Rand, he's I don't know if I like him. There's another character on there which you talked about in the Dumbbells and Dragons podcast. I believe Ward Meacham. He's sort of the initial bad guy in the series, but he turns out to be the most interesting character out of the whole series.
The old bad guy's more interesting than the good guy problem.
Yeah,
So it works with Marvel series. I mean, if you look at the first Daredevil season, it was really about the Kingpin and nobody else, and Daredevil was a side character.
Right.
Of course, it's the opposite with MCEU, because that's the one huge, glaring, glowing, blinking flaw of MCEU is the dearth of decent villains. I mean, the villains have kind of sucked, especially if you take out
the Mandarin.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I was so excited when I heard Ben Kingsley's voice just the cadence and tone of his voice was just. I'm like, oh my God, this guy sounds scary. I'm like into this, and then that didn't turn out. And but you take, with a few exceptions, you take away your Loki. I mean, obviously Loki is one of the great comic book supervillains in recent movies, I think we'd have to say. But boy, that's one area where Marvel has really disappointed me. I mean, God, Fox has done almost better, just because, I mean, Magneto goes a long way, and I don't know. I mean, that's kind of sad to look at, but I hope Marvel gets it together, and of course, maybe they will with Thanos as they're building towards that.
But shifting back the conversation to Iron Fist, the main character, Danny Rand, I find it hard to sort of
empathize with him.
Yeah, a little bit, because I mean, for one thing, he says he spent the last 15 years working on his mojo and his spirituality and his chi, and it's like, but he's like the most whiniest person on on the series.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of a mess, but I mean, obviously, I think, like I said earlier, the Ward Meacham character is a highlight of the series. Obviously, Rosario Dawson. It's always a good thing to have on.
Yeah, right. No doubt.
So,
welcome addition to see
exactly.
Night Nurse again.
Exactly. So, how about you, Dan? What do you think about the Iron Fist series?
I thought it was slow at times and kind of bored me a little bit at times. Overall, it was decent, but not as good as some of the other series.
No, I agree.
I think I'm gonna do my due diligence. I'll eventually watch it. I mean, I still haven't watched Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones, which I'm way behind on. I think
I just started Luke Cage, so I'm running behind. I did see Jessica Jones, though. That was really solid.
I'm still watching Lost, and they just got to the hatch, so I'm just like, I'm
Oh
waiting.
my God.
I want to see what happens next, so I got to do that first before I get
People
this.
will make fun of you, but you stick with it. You are just getting to when it's starting to get killer, dude. And for all the people that left that show after that season that you're on right now, it's like when the hatch to me was the pinnacle. But a lot of people left right before or after the hatch, and there is so much killer sci-fi. Some of the best sci-fi done in TV history in that show. You got some cool shit.
No, all kidding aside, I have watched it too.
Okay.
I'm
trying to be nice too. I'm like, God, just starting it? Wow. Have you avoided spoilers for 10 years?
But Iron Fist definitely I want to check out. I know people are saying a lot of mixed things about it, but I mean, the eventuality is they're gonna. I have to watch it if I'm gonna watch Defenders, and then if they end up incorporating the Marvel TV universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then I've got to play some catch up. So I mean, looking forward to it. Regardless of the reviews, I think I'll watch it.
I guess I'll just broach it a little bit, but how do you guys feel with them not casting an Asian as Danny Rand?
I think it was the right decision.
I have no problem with it.
To me, I want an adaptation of the characters, and he's not Asian, and that's part of the story. Now, I am very aware and sensitive to the greater concerns of diversity and multiculturalism, but to me, it seemed like this was a specific project to that was or unfair to pick on because of that. It's like suddenly Iron Fist is carrying the burden of Asian representation in superhero shows on its own, without acknowledging that there's been 10, 15 superhero TV shows that have come before it and 20 superhero movies that have come before it. Why, just because this one deals with Asian stuff, it's like, oh, okay, well, now we're going to take all our frustration on the lack of Asian representation out on Iron Fist. And, you might say the mistake they made was they should have made Shang-Chi. That's the killer Asian go-to in the Marvel universe,
Master
right?
of Kung Fu.
Yes, the master, and I think we talked about this on a previous podcast. Right. So, Danny Rand. For most people, I think most people have never read, or have no connection to the character. He's not the biggest character in the Marvel universe. So I think for a lot of people, they're like, yeah, why don't they make him Asian? But it's like if you read the comic, you're like, well, okay, but why couldn't we have Danny Rand or whatever? And also, if you think about it, now I know this gets really complex and it probably would be its own topic for a larger section of the podcast down the road or something, but you could make an argument that Iron Fist was one of the greatest examples of Asian representation in comics, because in the comic medium, especially in the 1970s and beforehand, what kind of Asian representation did you have of any kind, even the culture or anything, even having them eat Chinese food or something? It's like it just didn't, it was, we all know that you go farther back in time, the whiter the characters get, because that's the way that society was. Well, Iron Fist was an attempt to, try and play on this boom of kung fu cinema that was hitting, the 70s America. And so, yes, they segued into it the most easiest way they could by having a white guy, go into that world. But still, I was a white guy in the 70s, and so I could kind of that's cool. I'm looking at this issue, and for me, I'm like, wow, maybe I know Bruce Lee can kick ass, but maybe I could kick ass. Are you saying that this guy went and, into Kunlun and, was trained and was impressive and, learned their way? And it was a way to kind of broach that culture a little bit for a really white bread suburban Minnesota kid in the 1970s or whatever. So, it feels to me like it has an important place in multiculturalism and it introduced Colleen Wing and had in Misty Knight, I believe, and had characters that have become among the most representative of diversity in the Marvel universe. So yeah. It just seems like we a lot of people don't look at that complete picture.
I appreciate your points, and I tend to agree. And one thing that I remember, for me anyway, I guess, is that for me, I think Asian people are just more than martial arts.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like that would be racist to say, well, you got a martial arts character, we got to make him Asian now, it's almost a reverse racism.
All right,
there.
so, and I'm reminded of a conversation that Nichelle Nichols, who, plays Lieutenant Hura.
Right. Did you see her at WonderCon?
No, I didn't. But
she was there.
But this pertains to she was on Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast a few years back, and she was recounting an occasion that she had with Martin Luther King. You're nodding your head. Do you know the story?
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, pretty much Martin Luther King was a fan of the Star Trek show. And for the fact that there was, a black woman on the show who played a prominent role, on the bridge, and it didn't matter that she was black. It could have been anybody, really. And to get to that point in our society, eventually is I guess a worthy endeavor. So if you transfer that train of thinking.
Well, hold on, before you skipped the one key part of it. When she was talking to him, she was thinking of leaving the show.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
She tells the story.
I'm sorry, yes.
And it was Martin Luther King to talk her into staying in the role of Uhura.
Exactly.
What?
Martin Luther King saved Star Trek.
Thank you, MLK.
That's true. I did leave that out, but I was going to link to it.
Well, I'm sorry. Did I wreck the? Were you building towards it still?
It's fine. But you sort of draw if you can draw a correlation between that and this incident with the Iron Fist and the whole whether it should be Asian controversy, and I think we should aspire to have Asians more than just martial artists. I think they should be Captain Kirks. They should be other things. So. I guess that's the last one.
It's a systemic problem with Hollywood, because if you're talking about like Ghost in the Shell, I think they've got a little bit of a point. I'm not trying to apologize for whitewashing. That's what they call it, right? Whitewashing, right? Because generally, see, I'm against that too. I think you have to have some flexibility. It didn't kill me that Michael Clark Duncan was Kingpin in the Daredevil movie 2004 or whatever. But yeah, they're like, okay, well, we want a star that has a track record of opening, $50 million openings. Well, Hollywood has been so far behind. They have Asian actors, but no one that's carried movies of that level, certainly in the female persuasion. So it's a weird catch-22. I mean, the entire market is to blame for it, but I can a little bit empathize with an executive saying, what they should have done is they should have gotten someone from China or Japan that's a huge star there, and then you have your international business more guaranteed. Maybe that would have worked. But the problem with that is that most studios, to make things cheaper and to minimize risk, they sell off the foreign distribution rights or the lion's share of those profits to other companies. And so even though that may be where most of the money comes from for the overall worldwide box office take, they don't get as much of it. So, maybe that wouldn't work after all. I don't know. It's a tough issue, though, and I hope they're going to start addressing it. But it's going to take time before you have, because, a star's got to work through a few movies or just get a fluke, to get that $50 million opening weekend status. It's tough.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you couldn't even call her Major something. You have to call her the Major. You couldn't even.
Oh, because they didn't want to use the Asian name,
Yeah.
the surname. Oh, that is stupid. I didn't realize that. I haven't seen it yet, but that, you're right. That does sound stupid. The Major. Okay.
Anybody else mad?
I mean, as an Asian man, I understand the climate of today's Hollywood, and some there are legitimate arguments to or some people think there are legitimate arguments to say that yes, Danny Rand should have been Asian. I mean, I don't see it that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, the arguments that I made here in the podcast pretty much are my sentiment. I mean, if you look at the source material shows that Danny Rand was a white guy that that got transported to the magical kingdom of Kunlun and learned his martial arts and learned the way of the Iron Fist and I think it's true to the source material, I would hope that it would be true to the source material. So I don't really have a problem with it. Again, you're absolutely right, Aaron, in the fact that the Asians shouldn't just be about martial arts, and just because somebody knows martial arts, they shouldn't be Asian. So I think there should be that flexibility there, and I look forward to a day when when that Star Trek reality is our reality, and that anybody can be whoever they want to be, and there wouldn't be any kind of argument about it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, hopefully in the Defenders, Iron Fist is less whiny.
Yeah, hopefully they flesh him out a little bit. So.
There was a huge cosplay presence at WonderCon this year. I don't think anyone of us here has ever cosplayed before, but if we did, what would you cosplay as? Dan?
I wouldn't.
Well, okay, why not? I think we are owed at least a little bit of an elaboration there.
All the cosplayers I see, I'm just not a creative enough person to even attempt it.
What? See, okay, I assumed the inherent in his question would be if, because I'd be like, one of the things I used to always say is that I would never do it because I have standards. I would want something that looks cool and badass, and I know that to do the really cool badass ones, that costs some money. Not only the skill, But, you know, I mean, these people put a lot of time and cash into those. And I'm like, oh, I know I'd never have the patience to put out for that. But I assumed he meant if all the little, you know, that type of stuff was solved so that it was easier for you to do, then what would you do?
I still wouldn't.
Now, but that's for a different reason then. Why? Because you just don't like dressing up, or you feel awkward, or what?
Yes.
What do you wear? What's your average con uniform? I call it a uniform. You guys may not, but I have a uniform I wear.
Jeans and a geek shirt.
Jeans and a geek shirt. Just okay, cool. See, I wear a button-down shirt, which kind of looks like a little like actually a shirt that I originally bought for work at my day job. And because my thing is A, I'm not going to do the cosplay because of all those other reasons. But B, I'm trying to flag down interviews. I'm there to work. Okay, this is my job. I want to, you know, and I want to, you know, be taken seriously. And I'm constantly worried that people are like, who's this guy?
We said earlier that gender bending cosplay is trending now.
Well, speaking of work, which leads me a little tidbit during the Lucifer panel.
Yeah.
One of the producers came up and she sat down and her and I both to each other at the same time said, nice shirt. I was wearing a Mickey as a Stormtrooper t-shirt.
Mickey Mouse?
Yeah. As a
Stormtrooper. Nice.
She was wearing a shirt that was the Lucifer cast in a Last Supper type motif.
Sure.
Yeah, and we both literally at the same time pointing to each other's shirts and nice shirt.
Nice. Now, I did not mean to imply that geek shirt is too, because I said that right after you said that. I was not making that connection. I was thinking more like, I have some really loud comic shirts. Like an ex-girlfriend bought me these. Like, have you ever seen those Hawaiian comic shirts that they're just really loud and just the characters are just blowing out all over the place? I'm like, I had a couple of those and I was like, oh, maybe I should. I never wear them because they're so loud. And I'm like, oh, well, you can wear it at Comic-Con, right? And then I stopped and I thought, and that's not just like a geek shirt like the one you're wearing now. It's a cool, obviously nerd element, but but I'm like, I think I did maybe 1 year, and I was like, you know what? I just need to be that would be fine, but I just, you know what? I just go simple. I almost use the same shirt every time, so I literally do, or the same 2 or 3 just button downs.
So what would you cosplay as?
I would cosplay. Okay, so I'm assuming, unlike Dan, I'm going to go with this thing here. Okay, I'm assuming budget and my personal technical expertise are not an issue. Then I would do like one of the really badass ones I've seen, like a really good Doctor Doom, or I mean, in those take, you got lots of pieces and stuff. I remember I saw a really cool Cobra Commander, like an 80s style mirror face Cobra Commander at Comic-Con years ago, and he was flanked by like Tomex and Zaymot or whatever, and everything. It was like that is so cool. That badass helmet is just one of the coolest. So that would probably be something I would do.
Cool.
I've actually thought about cosplaying, like on the cheap end. I mean, I really wanted to put a Punisher, cosplay together, just to get it done. Be like, say at one point I've cosplayed. My friends and I have been throwing around the idea of like he dressing up as Indiana Jones and me being Short Round, and like creating a mining cart that we could like carry around with us. But
oh my gosh,
the crowds on the floor kind of wouldn't let us do that. And
who's this buddy that you said?
Oh, just my friend who's a filmmaker here in San Diego. His name
is Eric shorter
Allison.
than you? Because you're a big guy.
Yeah. He's shorter than he's shorter than me. I'm 6'3", so 6'3", Short Round, walking around with a smaller indie would probably be something unique you'd see at con. So
definitely love it.
We'll see.
I'd pay to see that.
One day.
Yeah, definitely. You could have some fun with that.
One day.
It's the sequel. Short Round grew up.
Alex?
For me, I'd want to do like a team cosplay. I'd want to do. I'll probably be Tiny, and other people do Battle Planet, Scotcha Man.
Oh, nice.
That would be cool.
Nice.
I've seen a couple individual. I haven't really seen a group do that, so that'll probably be one I'd like to do. That'd be cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's a good one.
That's pretty dope, bro. I'd join that group.
Short Round and Gotcha Man.
I guess for me, if it was like a cheap budget type of cosplay, I'm sort of nonchalant and kind of want to be on the down low. So I'd be something simple, just wearing Vulcan ears, but like in casual clothes.
Well, Matt Dunford has kind of opened my eyes to this, because I always approached it just like how I just described it. Yeah, it would be, I'll never do it because it'd take too much effort and too much money, both of which I wouldn't want to put into it. But I would have those standards, and I would need that, and no one's just going to buy one for me or make it for me. So, but Dunford, these little, Dan had mentioned his Weird Al Yankovic, and the characters from The Life Aquatic. It's like those are so simple and easy to do, and I'm like, I might start thinking about like a weird character who's just like on the peripheral, or just like, a normal clothes type of thing, and kind of go with it and go and see if anyone recognizes it and everything. That would be something, maybe.
I guess for something sort of in the medium range, it would take a lot of physical effort on my part. I'd have to do SDCC Fit for a few years. But I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fist of the North Star.
Oh yeah.
The anime.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to go as Hakoto no Ken.
Nice. You're close, man.
We'll see. And then something more elaborate. I talked about Vampire Hunter D earlier in the podcast. Be kind of cool to cosplay as Vampire Hunter D.
Good.
Yeah. I guess earlier I said I had Transformers in the brain. If you were a Transformer, would you be a Decepticon or Autobot? And what would you transform into? Go, Joel.
Autobot. I don't know what I'd transform into, but like a dragon or something big. I like the bigger Transformers, big guy. So it wouldn't be like Bumblebee or anything. It'd be something big.
I would probably want to be a Decepticon because they have the cooler logo, but in reality, I probably would be an Autobot. I'm too nice a guy, I think. But so we're supposed to come up with something, our own shape or whatever? Because I was thinking like I'd be Soundwave or something like that. I would be.
You could be another, jukebox. I mean,
Tape deck.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? So I've done a little film production, so I would be a camera that changes into a robot instead of a tape deck. How about that?
That works.
It'd be a smartphone.
Still is practical. Yeah, smartphone. There you go. Well, they had that. I was really pissed I didn't get that exclusive last year, I think it was. They had an exclusive, I forget which character it was, but he transferred, it might have been like a new version of Soundwave.
I think it was Soundwave.
Transferred into a tablet.
Yeah, it was Soundwave.
Yeah, that was a Comic-Con exclusive. I'm
Yeah.
like, after the con, I was like, damn, I wish I would have gotten that.
But you, Dan?
I have no idea.
Autobot, probably. Maybe
Transfer into Hall H.
maybe my first new car I ever had was transformed to a Acura Integra.
Ha!
1990. Four-door.
Love those cars back then.
Well, for me, I'd be an Autobot for sure. And I don't know if I'd transform into an automobile per se, but I transform into like a shield so that Optimus would never die again.
You're making me cry.
All right. Well, I guess we can flash forward and see what we'll be into, what's coming up for the rest of us, for all of us, and then we can start closing out the show. I guess just let us know what cons you'll be attending. Are there any cool projects that you're working on? And let us know where we can find you online. Joe.
Next up for us is possibly Silicon Valley Comic Con. After that, definitely Comic Con, and then eventually Long Beach, Stanley's Kamikaze, and then I guess whatever else is sprinkled into the middle. I think D23 is up soon.
Do you know when that is?
I'm not sure. I think it's week
Comic-Con.
before Comic Con, right? Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's week before Comic Con. We have one guy.
That makes it a tough month.
Yeah, I know. We have one guy on the East Coast. I think it's going down to Star Wars Celebration, so there may be some coverage for that. You can find us on Instagram mostly, Convention.Life. There's a link to our website there. We have interviews with artists, with cosplayers, with just San Diego celebrities, or local celebrities. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, we've got a packed schedule moving forward, and we're looking forward to it. So.
How many of you are in Convention Life?
I want to say about five or six of us. Myself, and we have one guy who's like works advertising for an advertising agency here in San Diego. He used to work for Jack in the Box as well. We got a couple Disney bloggers. We've got a pretty successful hidden Mickey blog. We've got a couple guys on the East Coast that cover our cons out there. We've got a guy that has his own website or has his own Instagram account called Nerd Vault, and covers vinyl toys, everything from Funko to Kid Robot.
Volt, like electrical charge.
Nerd Vault.
Vault. I'm sorry, storage vault,
yeah,
not
storage vault.
not a
So-
Chevy electric car. Gotcha.
Yeah, so we got a lot of guys. We got 5 or 6 people with some differing tastes. So it lends to some interesting entries for us. So yeah, looking forward to the year.
Cool. Jason?
Well, Comic-Con, that's always got to be part of the schedule. That's always something I'm looking forward to. I do want to add a couple cons this year, though. And so I had been thinking about Long Beach. I used to have a buddy who lived in the area, and so I was kind of trying to maybe coordinate that. And he moved, but I still may go to that. Kamikaze, I'm definitely looking forward to.
You mean LA Comic Con, right?
Pardon?
No, it's still and will always be Kamikaze.
Well,
They renamed it.
right, okay. Because that's in L.A., right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, well, that's not too far away, so that's definitely something. And I think, aren't there some smaller ones that are even smaller than SD Comic Fest that are like
Nerdbot.con.
pardon?
Nerdbot.con is a one-day con.
A Nerdbot Con.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't there an kanji anime or something like that at the hotels there on the 8?
Not an anime.
All right.
Oh, there's
But it's they call it that, but it's like it's just a small nerd convention that has comics and everything and action figures or whatever. But I think there's a couple smaller ones that I'm gonna keep an eye out for. So I'm gonna try to have a little bit more active schedule. I usually just go to Comic-Con, and then of course this year I added WonderCon. Like you guys have been doing it for a while. I haven't been back there since. I think actually I've been there once in the Anaheim years and then once in the San Fran years. But of course, I'm busy working towards launching my website. Actually, the website is live, herojournalism.com. Not much there. It's still under construction, and we're still working on our initial videos to launch that off. But that's what I'm really excited about, and which is taking up most of my time right now.
Cool. Dan, we might have to go to another podcast to discuss all the cons you go to.
Yeah. Right now, I know I have Silicon Valley coming up, D23, San Diego Comic Con. Those are the only 3 that I have set, but I will probably also do Long Beach Comic Con, Stanley's Kamikaze. Well, let's see, what other ones? Designer Con, and possibly also Rose City Comic Con in Portland later this year.
Did you say Designer Con, not Design Con, right?
Designer Con, yeah. It's basically, think of it as Artist Alley on steroids. That's all it is. It's just different artists in all different forms of media, whether it be art, whether it be vinyl toys, figurines, sculptures, everything is there.
Cool.
Yeah, up in, where's that? Pasadena. Yeah, the Pasadena Convention Center. It's a 2-day con. Cost last year, I think, was $15 for both days.
For Hall H, Silicon Valley, still kind of iffy. But we like to go back. We went last year just for a day. Hopefully they worked out a bunch of kinks, and looks like they expanded outside our convention center with some adjoining venues. So that should alleviate some of the problems that they had. Maybe Phoenix Comic-Con in May. We might look into that. And amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con in June. And, of course, the big ones, Comic-Con, San Diego, LA Comic-Con, Kamikaze, and Long Beach. And Designer Con, of course, yeah.
Oh, I guess, Dan, where can people find you online?
You can find me writing for the Nerd Element at thenerdelement.com and the Englishman in San Diego.com, or if you just don't feel like typing that all in, AEISD.com.
Cool. I guess just to add on what else we have going on at Hall H, the International Mobile Film Festival is coming up April 28th through the 30th. For more information, you can check them out. International Mobile Film. I'm sorry, International Mobile Film Festival.com. And Joel here is actually going to be taking pictures at that event. We're excited to have you there, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for having me out, guys. I look forward to it. Sounds like a very unique event, and be glad to cover it.
Yeah, and we'll be doing a red carpet podcast on the Sunday. It's the the awards night, so we're looking forward to checking it out. It's actually a 3-day event. The first day is a meet and greet. Then the Saturday, the second day, is actually when they'll be screening all the films. And Sunday, like I said, will be the awards night and red carpet event. If anybody's interested, it's here in San Diego. Contact me or us through social media. Let us know that you're interested. I got a 50% promo code. So there is a change in the venue. So also check out the website for more information. And there's only 14 more weeks until San Diego Comic-Con. So please make sure that you're getting that SDCC fit in because it really helps. Trust me. I guess before we close the show, is there anything else that we missed that you guys want our audience to know about? No?
I think we covered a lot of material today.
We did.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever get a chance, I know this is a WonderCon recap, so if you ever get a chance, get out to WonderCon because it really is one of those quality shows that will, they do it right. So, I think you'll have a good time regardless.
And again, if you're someone that laments how difficult it is to get tickets for Comic-Con San Diego, or if you're one of those complainers that complains about how busy it is, how crowded it is, how tough it is to do anything or get anywhere, this is your answer. I mean, we talked a lot, Hall H, previously about how San Diego Comic Fest is a great answer to that. Well, for some people, WonderCon is even better because it's a little closer to San Diego Comic-Con in that it's certainly not as big, but it's a decent sized convention with a lot of big name guests and such, and a pretty decent amount of attendance. San Diego Comic Fest was much more a smaller deal, more intimate affair. So if you want Comic-Con San Diego and are having trouble making it happen because of how difficult that is, or because of the lack of enjoyment you experience with that level of crowd control, WonderCon is your answer.
Well said. I'd like to thank Joel Feria, Jason Lethert, and Dan Barry for joining us on the podcast today. Really appreciate it, and look forward to having you guys on again.
Thank you, guys.
Great to be here.
Cool. Go ahead and close us out, Alex.
Thank you for listening to the Hall H Show. Our mission is to put the mainstream Hall H spotlight on artists, writers, and other creatives. We especially love emerging talent and people we think deserve more exposure. We all love attending conventions, so please make it a point to visit Artist Alley at all the conventions you plan on attending ongoing this year. And speaking of conventions, please make sure you are continuing to be SDCC Fit for the long con season ahead. Join in our fun by following the SDCC Fit movement online on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're listening to us on Google Play, iTunes, or Stitcher, we would appreciate a rating and a comment. And we're always looking for interesting guests to have on the show. So if you have any suggestions, please reach out to us on social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Are you an artist wanting to promote your Kickstarter campaign for an upcoming project? Let us know. Peace, cheers, and artist assemble.